Say, recording now.
It's recording and we're on YouTube, so you're good.
I believe you.
Yeah, it
You're
says,
not
the
gonna,
icon up there on the top says recording.
not gonna get, we're not gonna get stuck on little things. So welcome to, this is August. Time flies. April, and Chris, thank you for keeping your camera on. And we're streamed on YouTube. Did I cover that introduction okay? I mean, you know.
You're the one that always makes it, not me.
We get so, I know, it turns people off right in the beginning. We have an interesting agenda tonight. I have to say, there are a couple of things that are gonna take a while. And then I need the update for the parks. I'm looking forward to it, which is first. And then Gateway, some of the folks are already here, thank you. And that's gonna be an interesting presentation. I saw a piece of it earlier in the week. And then we have to talk a little bit about what is becoming this board's favorite subject, NYCHA. And I have some things to say, and basically the idea there is to ask for your advice. So if Parks is ready to take it away, go Parks.
Great. Good evening, everybody. So I guess I could start with everybody's favorite new topic that I report on, which is Park Enforcement Patrol summonses. Everybody's very, pleased to know that we're on the march and keeping things very safe in our parks. So for the period, let's see, it was the week ending March 9th through March 29th. There was a whopping 240 oath summons. I guess those are the regular tickets for all sorts of non-parking related violations. And then there were 105 parking violations. This is for Manhattan South, so it's not just District 4. But I do have some interesting, some interesting numbers. DeWitt Clinton, let me see if I have Hudson Yards, a lot of no standing, a lot of parking tickets, and I'm very pleased to see that. So Bella Abs of Hudson Yards, a number of them for no standing. I believe there's a couple also for DeWitt had several oath tickets for a variety of dogs off leash, things of that nature. Or even I think it was even for like resisting instruction, etc. So PEP is definitely very present. As we know, the South really only has a team of 5 officers to patrol the area. So they're doing really good job when they're out there to do what they need to do. The syringe report that yes, okay. So I mentioned in a previous meeting that the number of syringes that gets reported or that we encounter, that we find, clearly appears to be weather related, and that seems to be true because for since the period of March 13th until April 5th, there were 13 syringes found in DeWitt Clinton Park. So that's a huge jump. And they found an additional 5 this week. So that's a lot. So but I'm very happy that the staff is actually finding that. Max and I actually were out last week. We are anticipating some questions you may have about Ramona Ponte Park. Or if not, we will just give you a kind of a shared report on our meeting on the site. We know that there are concerns about the scaffolding. We met on site with one of the deputy chiefs of Department of Buildings because the scaffolding was a concern. I guess he had communicated, believe it or not, through 311 or mayoral correspondence, his concerns about the location. And so I was able to talk to him prior to our visit, let him know we were very concerned as well. So we went out to the site. We know that it has a scaffolding and it has a sidewalk shed, and there's been no activity there from the contractor for quite a while. One of the issues was that the play equipment enabled not little children, but clearly bigger kids who might want to do graffiti or get into other kinds of mischief to climb onto the scaffolding. So one of the things we did was we had to make an alteration to the play equipment. The play equipment it looks like a little house, so we had to take off a piece of the roof that would allow an adolescent to kind of leap from the roof onto the scaffolding to do whatever they want to do. So we made some modification, taking off the roof and taking off, I guess, two of the posts, I don't know what you call them, but a kid could shimmy if they wanted to, they could shimmy on them, get onto the scaffolding regardless. So we made that kind of modification, which was a good thing because for a brief period, that large piece of equipment had to be barricaded off. So we were able to open that up again so the kids can play on that. A smaller piece of equipment that is actually underneath the scaffolding still is barricaded, but the larger piece is open. And during our meeting with DOB, we also met with the contractor to talk about what our expectations were with them resecuring the scaffolding and the sidewalk that we're going to do going forward. And also, kind of, we said also talk about making some repairs to things that they've also damaged in the, in the safety service that's there. So we made a lot of progress in communicating with the adjacent building and holding them responsible for their impact on this project.
Do you have a sense of how long this scaffolding is going to be up?
Not yet, no, they have to resubmit the DOB. So all their permits are expired right now. The permits are expired with Parks, the permits are expired with DOB. They have to resubmit their permit for that scaffolding to DOB and also the Parks. And we were actually alerted to this by the state assembly member, state senator, and the council member, who we also met on site, the representatives, which they are hugely helpful in this whole process. But there's been a lot of communication between us, the electeds, DOB and Parks. So we are imminently awaiting the permit to get into our system from the building owner, who we also met on site. But the bottom line is we actually modify play equipment, which we don't do all the time. And it takes a very skilled person to do that, to make sure the equipment is still safe according to the manufacturer. And we did that in a span of 2 days. So that play equipment's completely open again, completely safe to use. And it's safe for kids to be on it again. We're also here because we want to talk about other scaffolding in your district, which we know is an issue. For example, Matthews Palmer, which has had scaffolding up for years before this year. And that's been an unfortunate situation. Thankfully, the scaffolding has been removed this past winter. We in Parks actually filled in the divots that were left on the asphalt with temporary asphalt. If you guys hear any complaints about that, please let us know and we'll fix it again. We're still awaiting the actual permanent repair of that asphalt from the contractor. But in the meantime, if you guys notice those divots reappear, please let us know we can reapply asphalt. It's cold patch, it's not the hot mix we should use. We did want to let you guys know that we avoid a situation like that in the past. So in the future now, we want to come to you guys before scaffolding comes to our parks. To get your guys' opinions on, what we're doing, on the outreach we're doing, letting you guys know and let the public know. So in that vein, Matthews Palmer is going to be new scaffolding in the park. It's unfortunate news, but at Parks, we can't deny any private building owner from fixing their building. And this is a very key point. Private owners have every right to fix their building. And even Parks, DOT, anyone cannot prevent them from doing that, especially when it's an unsafe condition. So there's a building on the east side of Matthews Palmer at 45th Street this time. The scaffold before was on 46th Street. This is on 45th Street. The building's owners have been very communicative with us, very receptive to us. We met them on site a few times, and they're gonna have to do some stucco repair on their facade. That construction is not gonna take nearly as long as the building on 46th Street. Also, these owners on 45th Street have been incredibly great so far to deal with, just on a very personal, professional level, and their contractor the same. So they're gonna put scaffolding up maybe this month, maybe next month. We haven't got the exact date yet nailed down. It's gonna go about 8 feet off of the building, so it's gonna affect the table, the chest table that's there, the benches. We're trying to avoid the impact of the adult fitness equipment because we know it's used by a lot of people. It's not like play equipment where we have to have 6 feet off of it to make it safe. We can actually put scaffolding closer. So we're gonna see how close we can get it and how much we can leave open. I'll let you guys know once we have the final plan. But it's gonna be 8 feet of scaffolding in the park. It's just gonna affect the benches, the table, and perhaps even adult fitness. And that should last for about 3 to 4 months. And we're gonna do regular check-ins with these guys to make sure they stay at target, which we unfortunately did not do with the Matthews Palmer course. Not that we didn't try, but that was just a whole different situation. So we're trying to avoid that this time. Then at Hell's Kitchen Park, the building on also the east side of that park by the swing set, they have to do some facade repairs as well. Same situation with the building owners, being very communicative, very receptive to us. It's a family-owned building, and they need to fix their facade as well. For that project, which should also be a couple months long, that's gonna impact the swing set at Hell's Kitchen Park, just the swing set. It's heavily used though, so when we close an amenity in our park, we look at other amenities nearby that have the same thing. So Ramon Ponte nearby has swings that people can use in the interim. I know it's not ideal, but we have to close that swing set up. You know, there is a public benefit here where they're also talking to an artist. And that facade looks directly up on the park, barely any windows, and they actually want to locate a mural on that building. It's not public property, so we'll not go through public review. Parks doesn't really have necessarily any say in what that might say, what that might look like. We do look at it from a non-permitting angle. And they do allow us to have some feedback on it. So it's not graphic, it's not saying anything, terrible. But it's, in the end, it should be a really nice mural on this building, overlooking the park, making it more colorful facade. So there's some kind of public benefit after this is done. Paul, are there any other scaffolding issues?
No, but
I'm registered for the mural.
Humans. There's also some kind of carbon absorption with this mural. It's like this really interesting technology where it actually absorbs carbon inside the paint. So it's carbon sequestration. We would never allow it if it's more than a few months, obviously, but we figure, if they want to paint the mural of the building, that's also their right.
I just want to comment, on both of these two cases, what's really different about what happened at Matthews Palmer was. The building owner was really very actively involved in this project. They want to improve their building or protect their building, whereas Matthews Palmer was a little bit different. I think at the beginning, the co-op was kind of, okay, go ahead and do it, but they weren't really actively involved. And so I think, in this fashion, having some, skin in the game, some interest in the outcome, I think this is definitely going to move a lot more smoothly with a lot fewer problems. So I just want to.
Alice, welcome. You have given us tenure. Wherever mine school. You've given us quorum. I just thought I'd make it clear to everybody that we now can write letters and vote on them.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yes, the one that's covering the chest and can they cantilever?
So there are situations where you can allow people inside a scaffold to kind of like on a sidewalk shed. We don't typically do that, but if that's something you guys want us to look into, we certainly can. It's just that it might harbor some kind of nefarious activity. You have a covered situation like that.
Well, really, it's for fall protection, it
Yeah.
has the bridge has the top, the
Yeah.
scaffold has it, so. I mean, I've had the cantilever before, and then they make sure they have their layer down in front of their boards. That stops any little debris, it might be something to look at, then it's not closed at all. I can understand the swing set, like that makes sense.
No,
But the seating area with that, just maybe I'm sure. When does the procedure start now where you guys come to us prior? After these two that you just went through, where you had the co-op?
yeah, it's kind of after we have a good idea of what's gonna happen with this park. We have a general schedule. So before the permit is issued, we're gonna try to come to you guys, just so you guys have a heads up of what's going on. But not before we meet with them, because then we don't understand the full scope, and there's no point in meeting with you guys. But the reason we don't typically have open scaffold in the park is because people hang from it, they might do stuff with it, they might climb on it, they can smoke under there, there can be homeless encampments. So it's typically where we don't keep the scaffolding open, and where we do request that they cover with that wood panel, and not even chain fence, just a wood construction fence.
Yeah, maybe that's better, actually, you're probably right. So,
So I actually have two questions, and I had to go off of the scaffolding as well. So you said it was 8 feet. What is it for, you're gonna come off the wall 8 feet, but what is it from like a swing set? What is it you need from there?
So the swing set, unfortunately, it might be smaller than 8 feet, it might be up to 20 feet, which is what the code
Okay.
says. The code is 20 feet maximum, however, when you get the swing sets and play equipment, we need that safety distance after the play equipment or after the swing set, which we cannot meet even if it's within 8 feet. So even if it's a foot off the swing set still has to be closed, because people can't swing on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
and the second one was for Paul, actually, and I did with your PAP, you were saying, are we doing parking tickets, the PAP offices are doing parking tickets?
They do it adjacent to park property. So there may be restrictions for no parking, no standing, no idling, a variety of things, but it's adjacent to park property only. I usually call them when I have people parking on the sidewalk at Chelsea. So it's a variety of things. It's all stuff that has an impact on the quality of life in the park.
I get that, I'm just thinking that's more of a DOT, you know, parking, idling, I'm
They're
just
not.
thinking they should be. More, the officers should be in the park and
That's right.
patrolling
That's right.
instead of out on the street giving.
No,
parking
they're not out
tickets.
on the street. These tickets are given.
So when they come into the park,
So if they are, so unfortunately, at Bella Absa, they give a lot of, well, this is probably why it happens. The PEP office is stationed at Bella Absa. They have like basically 3 large blocks of, and then the park. PEP office is right there for that particular property. So if there are any violations of the parking restrictions on the curb that is adjacent to the park, they've been getting ticketed. Now, I happen to know that because of the bathrooms that are there are a lot of, there may be a lot of, I don't know, truckers or caddies or whoever that may park there inappropriately. So those are the people who are being ticketed. They do not go through the neighborhoods giving out tickets. It is only for parkland and park and literally curb lane adjacent to the park that these are being given. Right.
Have you guys had a chance to check out the sidewalk situation in front of Chelsea Green? Is it hazardous? Is it a problem?
So we both looked.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Okay, so that is, it's, people don't like it, but it's spalling happens to a lot of concrete. It depends upon, the mix of the concrete, whether it was actually made, ideally made in ideal, set under ideal conditions. It also has to do with some natural wear, some natural weathering, and also the salt that we put down, to prevent, people tripping and falling. So that's what it is. It is unsightly. I have seen worse spalling in other locations, but that's really what it is. We'll keep a look at it. We'll keep watching it. And obviously, if it cracks and breaks off and there are trip hazards, I know we're going to patch them. But right now, I think it's more of an aesthetic concern than anything else.
Okay, we just have to worry about hazard.
Yes. I mean, I think it might be, quite frankly, it might be more of an issue in the winter if you get ice forming in those little, depressions. that are there.
Right.
But I mean, that's sometimes what happens to concrete.
Have you reported this back to the Clinton Street or am I the first to hear it?
I think that we had this through an email. We responded that it was typical fall.
Okay, I just wasn't on the link then. Okay.
And then on Gutenberg playground, actually, we're replacing the entire concrete sidewalk in front of Gutenberg this spring, early summer, which is great. We actually gave DOT money to do this for us. It's Parks money that we're giving to DOT and DEC. And they're gonna fix all the concrete in front of Gutenberg. So you guys will see that this spring.
Great.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Please.
Well, go ahead.
Following up to a couple of questions, one following up to Candace's question about the parking tickets. You seem to be really pleased about there being 105 parking tickets issued. Why would you be pleased about that? Is it
Well,
because it's revenue to the park or?
No, I'm glad to know that they're out there and they're
They're doing their job.
getting it done. But also there were 240 tickets, for other infractions as well.
That was gonna be my second question. What are those? Can you give us examples of what those
Certainly.
infractions are?
Let's see. DeWitt Clinton, let's see, one for unleashed dog. Just call that's no skin, that's also that.
There's smoking, there's unleashed dogs.
Let's see, I made a point of putting somebody in here. Okay, DeWitt Clinton, 1 dog on field. 3 DeWitt Clinton dog on field, 3 unleashed dog, DeWitt Clinton, those things like that.
Okay.
A lot of vehicles at Hudson Yards and a lot of everything else in other places. And I will tell you also that 240 includes other parks, Union Square, Washington Square, Murphy Brother Playground, City Hall Park. It's a huge segment of Manhattan. So they're really going around and keeping an eye on that.
Okay, and that's what you like, but they're doing their job.
They're getting it done and they're present and, you know, it's, in many ways, it's actually a very, very difficult job. When people see NYPD, you know, they know jig is up, they're gonna get it. And NYPD doesn't wanna have, you know, people to love them because they're, you know, giving out tickets or arresting people. PEP officers, they also
It's education first.
education and also some degree of, you know, being an ambassador. So, even though I've gone on record internally as saying, yes, bring down the hammer on this people. They don't like to do that. They want it, you know, and I know that our commissioner also, all of our commissioners want, parks to be, you know, inviting, place where pleasant things always happen. So getting a ticket is not something that they want to do or that we want to do. So that it's a very, very difficult, task to have to give out summonses in the park. I will tell you that in some locations, Union Square, there are a lot of tickets for unlawful vending. There are a lot of tickets also for setup, things that are left overnight. You know, they call it unattended property. And so when the person comes back, you know, if there's a table chained to a lamppost and the person comes back to do their setup, and PEP is there, they will ticket them for leaving their stuff unattended. So there's a lot of that kind of surveillance of the and you know and monitoring of the quality of life and the park experience that they're actually, you know, tasked to uphold.
Now, what happens if the people who get these tickets don't pay? What follow-up enforcement do you have?
Like all enforcement.
Is it- I mean, how does that work?
These aren't criminal tickets.
So here you have a dog, it was unleashed, you give a person a ticket. What happens then?
There's civil tickets, right? They're not criminal tickets. They go to OWA, they don't go to criminal court. So it's like when you get a sanitation ticket and those stack up, the fines keep increasing and, you know, stuff could happen after, but it's not a criminal ticket.
Thank you. That's good to know also. But yes, I would expect, you know, as a person who's gotten a ticket and did not ignore it, you know, that's unconscionable to me. So, but I would expect there is a consequence. So yes.
No, I was gonna just say about I'm glad you kept expanding about what the other tickets were, because I was like, are we just arresting them for going to the bathroom? You said in our area, and I was like, that's quality of life for people to go to the bathroom. So that was my question for you.
I think the thing that we're trying to say, Paul, is like, we want the people that are, you know, doing drugs, getting tickets, you know, smoking pot in the park or smoking, or people that are, you know, giving tattoos and haircuts, you know, like the stuff from, you know, I don't know if there's any numbers on that.
Well,
And then
let me just
an
finish your
update
question.
on Matthews Palmer, because that was such a, you know, a big conversation for us. And this, when was that?
That was probably like the end of last summer. There was the whole issue of, you know, inappropriate activity, largely, it was actually in McCaffrey, but we know that it was overflowing. And unfortunately, that appeared to be, you know, that was also cultural, it was largely, you know, enacted by the individual populations. We'll see what happens this year. Part of the issue was also just numbers of officers. And I will tell you that something like cutting hair, that might be something that they would do with education, so you really can't do that here. They know where the hotspots are. We tell them where the hotspots are. And what I will do is I've noticed a change in just with the syringes, for example. So now the season is changing. I'm gonna be much more mindful now of the breakout. Because this report comes, I put this report together from what they send out every week. And so one is just a count, and one is a bit of a disaggregation by park and also a description. So I'll be watching the descriptions for things of that nature. I'm sure that, you know, and it's not gonna be, you know, someone might want to see that it's, you know, 200 tickets for smoking. I'm sure it's not gonna be something like that, but I'm sure there will be some in there. And I'll make sure that I report them.
The second question that I had is around, so I had heard from our school that fentanyl canisters have been found on the street.
Which? Oh, Fenton.
Fentanyl
What are
canisters,
those?
and so they look like they're like smaller than a penny. And it's like, it sort of looks like, you know, like kids paint, like
Yeah, okay,
canisters,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
it's really, really
with a little flip
small.
top.
Yeah, with a flip top on them.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that that too is like, parents and families need to be aware that if you find that in the park and your kid thinks like, oh, what is that colorful little thing? They can't look into it or sniff it or what have you, like just some education around that. Maybe some eyes on if we find it in our parks.
That goes with syringe reports, it seems to me.
Well, it's syringe reports, well, we think of syringe reports as, we report them as a bloodborne pathogen. So yes, we call it syringes, but we're really thinking about bloodborne pathogen reports. So, you know, the fentanyl might not be in that category, but that is something else that we can make a note of. That's something, I don't think we really collect that data, but when my staff, what I can ask them to do is when they're doing their daily task report, which is a report they enter in their handheld, and it says how long it took them to clean and how many staff were with them, you know, how many bags of garbage there were. I can ask them, if you see something unusual, if you make a note, just type it in. Those will come up in the report. I don't really collapse those numbers. Most of these numbers are reported to me and I massage them for you, but it would be interesting to see how common that is
Yeah, that would be cool.
in
That would be
their
cool.
SLAs.
That just taught me something. I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
I just learned this week.
Apparently, they were a big thing, in Fort Greene Park, basically 2 years ago. According to a quick Google search.
If there's nothing else for parks, I have one question for, you go first.
I've heard of the carbon eating paint.
Yeah.
So we'd love to hear that,
Carbonating and.
because there's like the concrete that does it as well. I think Marty might even ask, how are we doing on a pilot program for solar light?
Gee, what was I just gonna bring up? How do you read my mind like that?
Just one light.
Max,
A revolution.
Max and I had a very, we had a very, for me, educational conversation this afternoon. There is a pilot program, and I don't wanna tell you about it if he's in the room. I'd rather you do that.
Yeah, so, you know, obviously, as you guys know, we have two types of lights in parks, right? Security lights, which are like the pedestrian poles. And then field lights, which are on our fields that have the really bright pole lights. Those field lights are completely parks owned, maintained, paid for electricity from Con Ed, that kind of stuff. The park security lights, those 12-foot pedestrian poles look really nice. Parks pays the upfront cost of those are a capital project. But in terms of maintenance and the electricity, that's supplied by DOT. That's a great benefit we have. And those lights are on 24/7, they never shut off. For security lights that are solar, we have one pilot program downtown in Manhattan, basically at Pier 42, which is a new waterfront park. That was built in collaboration with other city agencies, EDC, DDC. And as part of that program, the designers successfully convinced DOT and parks to trial these solar lights. It's been successful so far. These lights provide enough light.
Marty, what a shock. So they work all over the world, they're gonna work here, there's sun.
So, they're actually completely.
I knew you were gonna say that.
I can't believe they were.
So they're completely disconnected from the grid. They're actually not connected at all by any electricity to the grid whatsoever, so they're completely powered by batteries. We don't put these all over for a few reasons, right? So one, it's just a pilot program right now with DOT. And as part of DOT's pilot program, it's only really in flood prone areas that put it in. The rationale behind that is that in flood prone areas, it floods, it's a sludge effect, right? And there's potential for that electricity to get cut off. So during those events, these solar lights can stay on when there's no power being supplied to them. So that's the rationale why they're in these flood prone areas. Why we don't have them inside the inner city is a few reasons, right? So one, we need the solar aspect to actually be there for the lights to be powered. That is affected all the time by tree canopies, by buildings, this other stuff that blocks out. So it might not be practical in all situations. On the waterfront sites, it's kind of a perfect situation for these to be a trial, right? Because it's not on that large canopy, there's not on these large buildings. The other issue with it is that it's a more upfront cost to us because they're more specialized, right? And also we don't have all these parts in stock if one of these was to break. The other lights is so standard that DOT has always parked the stock, as well as Parks can potentially fix this stuff. So it's just a trial right now, but, you know, just keep in mind, new LEDs we install have such a low power draw compared to the old incandescents. That it's minuscule at a site level, obviously, it all builds up once you put all the lights in the city into one bucket. And the cumulative power is probably a good amount, but on an individual level, this power draw is so little as LEDs, and these LED bulbs last for decades. So just keep that in mind when you guys think about solar lights.
So the letter that the board approved, that our letter that the board approved at the last meeting, it went through with no comments. And you know the letter, I mean, short, item 36, a sort of short letter. Now has in it the information we just heard. It is still asking for the Department of Transportation, a letter to the Department of Transportation, but Parks has been copied, and so is Eric Botcher. It's asking for updates, and as the technology improves, correct me, Max, if I'm wrong, as the technology improves, some of the restrictions on where you put solar lights are gonna diminish because you don't need as much sunlight on those collectors with new technology, and it should spread. The other comment that I heard you say that you don't have the parts, well, over time that will change too.
Yeah, the Valley Health, we covered this island has a bunch of solar lights right now. There's a greenway in the Bronx that has some solar lights. So they are in the city.
The East River Park has them now that they're building.
Well, Pier 42 definitely has them. I have to get back to you if Esker is gonna have them or not.
Kind of see it going up the road now, over there.
Yeah, Pier 42 is by the Eastern.
This is your chance, before I go to Gwen, this is your chance to push on this issue with Max, if you want.
I think he knows. I also think, I appreciate you giving us that information. And as we know, Marty, they're gonna have the battery in them, so lights coming in, it feeds the power. And as he said, the LEDs don't take a lot, so this.
That's all
thing
good.
that, you know, we are the environmental board, right, so if we're not pushing. Who's pushing?
Well, the letter is stronger with this information in it,
Yeah.
and we'll see what happens. And Max will, hopefully, Paul and Max, whether you're here or not, will keep us informed on that project on Pier 42, which I think is interesting.
Well, you know, HRPT is, we've asked repeatedly.
And they should be doing it too. And this information from Pier 42 should be fed to them.
Exactly. Because when they
I'm
ask,
sure you're doing that.
Well, Hudson River Park,
it's not really them, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
we sit on the board, but we don't actually have operational authority there.
No, but
Yeah.
the information that you're providing from that pilot.
Yeah.
Should feed their enthusiasm to fill their park with solar lights.
The second they do their maintenance, they should be turning it over. Remember, Marty, we were told they couldn't put solar when they were signing a new lease at Chelsea Piers, which is just ridiculous. And then when we were told the pier was falling down, where they're building the movie studio, magically, the private contractor's been able to put them on. Because they're paying for that power, right? So, you know, Hudson River Park Trust is not off the hook in my mind either.
And our job is to keep pushing,
Yeah.
because we have over time, this committee and this board has, we've got some solar installations throughout our neighborhood that wouldn't have been there, I don't think, without our making lots of noise, so
And
please.
they haven't been here in a while, by the way.
So that's right, I'll note that. Go ahead. You had a question?
Oh, yes, I was gonna say, this is gonna come later when you actually have picked out the lights, I guess, but I just wanted to be sure that the lights are not gonna shine into the water close to the pier. I mean, if they shine in the lights of the person driving the boat, they can't see what they're doing the same way they can't in a car. And, I was in charge of building here in, Provincetown, and they put up these very tall lights to flood everything, the whole pier and everything. And the fishermen didn't like it because when they came in, they couldn't see how to dock their boat. So they shot them all out. I don't think we're gonna have that here, but you don't want it shining in their eyes, that's all.
You're raising the gun issue for no, it's not our.
No.
That's an interesting point. Thanks for noting it down, I think you did. Thank you, Parks. Thank you very much. Appreciate your coming.
So, and
And Max,
this gives you a sense.
you made a mistake this afternoon.
Or did I? Well, myself, whatever, you guys know.
Exactly.
Hey, give it up to anyone on this committee, man. This is why Parks is great, we're very reachable. You know, we're unlike other city agencies where you might ask for funding liaison, which is totally fine, but at Parks, you get the people actually doing the work in your district talking to you guys.
So anybody who wants this number.
And this is
I need to
basically.
talk to you about circles.
Yeah.
Good night, Max.
We should move the agenda to the next, this is actually an interesting presentation that's coming. About the Gateway Tunnel and the changes that have occurred over the last little while in their planning, so. You guys have got the floor.
Thanks, Marty. Thanks, everybody. My name is Rebecca Zach. I'm the Senior Director of Government and Community Affairs at the Gateway Development Commission. In my prior life, though, I worked at New York City DOT for 12 years. So hearing that lighting conversation really took me back. So it was nice to hear that. But we have, as you might remember, we briefed you late spring, early summer about park construction impacts in the park and the water and the landslide. There have been some changes since then, and tonight is our opportunity to update you on that. Marty, we thank you for the very useful conversation recently and getting your feedback. We tried to address everything here in the deck, but if we didn't, please ask questions and we're happy to answer them. I'm going to hand this off to Sam Bromberg to take the floor, but this is a healthy size deck, so we appreciate everyone's attention tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. All right, so like Rebecca said, this presentation should be familiar to those of you who were at our last presentation back in June. So we've essentially taken what we last showed you, reiterated the broad strokes of the scope of work that we're wanting you to consider, and then pointed out new information and specific construction means and methods that have changed since then. So Jake Wade will very briefly walk through some background information, which will be a review of what we talked about before. And then I'll jump into the project changes in the Hudson River and in Hudson River Park, as well as some of the safety measures and best management practices that the contractor will follow. So I think with that, I'll just pass it right along to Jake.
Thanks, Sam. So I'm just going to give some brief context on the Hudson Tunnel project for anyone who's unfamiliar. Most of the information that I am presenting right now is exactly the same as what was presented to CB4 back in June of 2024, just for everyone's understanding. So again, the existing rail tunnel beneath the Hudson River between New Jersey and Penn Station needs to be fully closed for the reconstruction due to damage sustained during Superstorm Sandy. The Hudson Tunnel project provides a new tunnel under the Hudson River between New Jersey and Penn Station, in order to maintain Amtrak and New Jersey Transit service along this corridor during that reconstruction, and also to provide increased train capacity and redundancy in the future. So here you can just see where the existing North River Tunnel is in the white dashed line, and then where the proposed new alignment of the Hudson River Tunnel would be in the red bullets line. So again, briefly giving a broad overview of the environmental review and Section 4F process for the project. In May of 2021, an environmental impact statement, or EIS, and record of decision was prepared for the Hudson Tunnel project in order to assess and document the environmental effects and to satisfy the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. At that time, the Federal Railroad Administration, or FRA, was the lead agency, and the Federal Transit Administration, or FTA, was a cooperating agency for the NEPA EIS. Now the Gateway Development Commission, or GDC, is the project sponsor for the Hudson Tunnel project. So Section 4F of the US DOT Act establishes the requirement for all federally funded projects to evaluate the use of public recreation lands and facilities. So these include public parks, recreation areas, wildlife and waterfowl refuges, and historic sites as well. So transitioning a little bit into the proposed project modifications in this area. Again, the information that I'm presenting here is the same as what was presented in June of 2024. So after the completion of the final EIS in 2021, there were some changes to the proposed project in the vicinity of the Hudson River and Manhattan waterfront area. And these require reconsideration of two Section 4F properties as follows. So the first one is the Hudson River bulkhead, which is eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. And then the second is Hudson River Park, of course, and specifically the portion both land and water near West 30th Street in the vicinity of the West 30th Street heliport and the Pier 66 boathouse. So this figure quickly just shows the area of the proposed project modifications in that red hatch, and then the extent of the Hudson River bulkhead and Hudson River Park in the gold line and the green and purple hatch. So with that, I'll pass it back to Sam to get into more of the specifics that are underway now.
Thanks, Jake. So yeah, I'll dive into the project activities in Hudson River Park as currently proposed. So like Rebecca sort of said at the top, the following slides definitely show a lot of information. I'll walk you through it and try to be really clear, but this whole presentation will be available online for further review and for future reference. So first off, a few terms that you'll hear and see in the next batch of slides. A clamshell bucket and vibratory hammer are pieces of construction and equipment that would likely be used in the Hudson River. And then on the right here is an example of a temporary shaft, which may be constructed in the heliport portion of Hudson River Park. So just to give you a visual as we get into more of the details. And as I continue explaining these project activities, you'll recognize some of them as the same as what we presented before. And then any new information would be highlighted on slides formatted like this with that blue latest information banner on the left-hand side. So we briefed you in June on the need to remove obstructions and piles associated with former piers 68 and 69 in the Hudson River. But our Section 4F outreach this time around is focusing specifically on obstructions between the bulkhead and the pier headline. So that's the portion of the river under Hudson River Park Trust jurisdiction. And given that we're in close coordination with HRPT, and just to be clear, that's the Public Benefit Corporation maintaining Hudson River Park. So next, we're going to talk about ground stabilization at the bulkhead and in Hudson River Park landside, as well as across 12th Avenue. So the second project change is that at the bulkhead, ground stabilization will be conducted from both land and water rather than just from land, as we'd assumed in the FEIS. And then there are two potential approaches to ground stabilization in HRP and across the roadway here, only one of which is actually going to end up being conducted. The first potential approach would have stabilization being done from a temporary shaft, like that one in the previous image, and that would be constructed in the West 30th Street heliport. That approach we've already presented to you. The only difference now is that there are two additional potential shaft configurations that might be used. And the second potential approach, new to you now, would have stabilization being done from the ground surface, requiring the 12th Avenue lanes to shift a bit into the heliport portion of the park. So just zooming in from that graphic Jake had, this is the area of the proposed project modifications generally. For organizational purposes, we've categorized the project activities like we did before as being either in the water side or the land side of the park. So in the next slides, I'll walk through those sort of three sets of project modifications that I just touched on. The first is obstruction removals in the Hudson River portion of the park. I'm not going to spend too much time here, given we spoke about it in June, but just to refresh, work would be conducted from barges on the river using equipment similar to what I had on screen before. And we're continuing to coordinate these activities with the Army Corps, the Coast Guard, other regulatory agencies, and HRPT, of course. So these graphics should also be familiar to you. Here we have the conceptual staging plan for obstruction removal at Pier 68. And you can see the tunnel alignment in that black outline, the obstruction removal area in green, and then the active work area in the aqua blue color, sectioned off by marker buoys shown in white. And then here you can see the conceptual staging plan for obstruction removal at Pier 69, former Pier 69. And again, note that for 4F, we are focusing in particular on activities in Hudson River Park. So the boundaries of that are shown with the red dashed lines. It's bounded by the pier headline in the river, and then the eastern end of the park adjacent to 12th Avenue. The schedule for obstruction removal activities is unchanged since we talked in June. This work would occur over 2 seasons, generally from beginning of July through end of January in 2025 and in 2026, just spilling into the first month of 2027. So, like I mentioned, having ground stabilization at the bulkhead be conducted from both land and water is new since we spoke in June. This would require barges in the river adjacent to the bulkhead, as well as potentially having a platform straddle the bulkhead. We're making sure HRPT is apprised of and on board with all of the construction activities we're anticipating, so we'll continue to coordinate with them. Now, this next refinement in construction means and methods that we'll discuss is ground stabilization in the landside portion of the park and across 12th Avenue. Again, there are 2 approaches to this, only one will actually be progressed. So the first is ground stabilization done horizontally via a temporary shaft in the heliport. With this option, the 12-foot pedestrian walkway and the 15-foot bikeway that we talked about in June would still be provided. The shaft would either be configured as one rectangular shaft, which is consistent with the FAIS assumption, 2 circular shafts, or 1 peanut-shaped shaft. So really quick, we have these configurations shown graphically. This is the rectangular, 2 circular, 1 peanut, all generally in the same footprint. So the second potential approach to ground stabilization through this area, which may be implemented instead of using the temporary shaft, it would have stabilization be conducted vertically from ground surface, requiring lane shifting. Again, with this approach, the 12-foot ped path and the 15-foot bike path would still be provided, and then crosswalks across 12th Avenue at West 29th and West 30th Streets would be maintained throughout construction. Again, coordinating all of these activities with HRPT and then also with city and state DOTs. So these activities are likely going to continue to be refined, but this is what we know currently. So just to, again, illustrate the lane shifting approach, here you see existing conditions in the area, the 12th Avenue travel lanes, and then the ped and bike paths are in blue. As we get into construction, the 12th Avenue lanes would shift sequentially as work moves across the park and across the roadbed. That work is identified in this sort of red transparent layer. But this image is sort of the furthest extent of lane shifting, with both the north and southbound travel lanes bumping out west into the heliport portion of the park. The pedestrian and bike paths would also be shifted. Here they're shown hugging the bulkhead, but their ultimate configuration is going to depend on construction needs. Regardless, though, safety measures would be provided. That includes concrete barriers to prevent vehicles accessing the ped and bike paths, plastic delineators to separate those paths, flaggers and pedestrian managers for traffic flow organization. And then also physical signage would be posted alongside digital notification in advance of any of these shifts to provide cyclists notice of upcoming changes. I should also note that the West 29th Street will be closed to through traffic between 12th and 11th Avenues, with the exception of emergency vehicles during this time. But the bike path on that street will continue to be maintained. And again, to be clear, this is really just an illustrative graphic showing potential staging and activities to the extent that we understand them currently. We're in close coordination with HRPT and we'll be notifying you and the public as these activities continue to be refined, and definitely prior to any on-the-ground changes we anticipate happening in the fall. And then, yeah, this last slide just shows the bike and ped paths and the lanes shifting back into their original positions. The last item that's different since we spoke in June is that we would no longer need to erect the utility bridge over 12th Avenue, if you recall talking about that. Trench crossings for utility and slurry will instead be provided below ground across 12th Avenue, and that's consistent with the FEIS. So construction schedule, there are a few changes. We've broken them again into waterside and landside. In the river, with the activities associated with ground stabilization at the bulkhead, we would anticipate work being conducted for up to about 3 years with 24/7 operations. And then on land, we're currently anticipating an approximately 42-month construction period, which is a little longer than what we showed back in June, as well as 24/7 mining operations to support tunneling through the area. Any changes to these durations or times will continue to communicate with HRPT and you all if and as soon as they do come up. Also, GDC is going to be conducting a robust noise monitoring program during the construction period, and we'll have specific procedures established for submitting noise complaints in order to ensure we're being compliant with contract specifications and with the measures outlined in the FEIS previously. And we'll have a similar monitoring program and procedure in place for air quality too. So that wraps up the refinements to construction means and methods that we're currently contemplating. But to get back into the regulatory side of things and pick up where Jake left off, Section 4F requires consideration of historic resources. And at the same time, Section 106 also requires review of a project's effects on those same resources. So like we presented to you last time in June, the State Historic Preservation Office in 2024 determined that the remnants of former Piers 68 and 69 in the river are not eligible for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. We are now reinitiating consultation with them about the changes to the project that I just ran through with you, but we anticipate that they're going to find these changes will have no additional adverse effects to the bulkhead beyond what was originally disclosed in the FEIS. And now for Section 4F, a use of a 4F property occurs either when the property is permanently incorporated into a project, the property is temporarily occupied for construction-related activities, or when nearby construction activities impair the features of the property. So in coordinating with FRA and FTA, we've determined that the currently contemplated project changes are consistent with the 4F use finding from the FEIS for both the bulkhead and the park. There would be no new adverse effects to historic or archaeological resources, and then recreational features of the Pier 66 boathouse and the river itself would not be substantially impaired. Following construction activities through this area, GDC is going to restore the affected portion of the park in coordination with HRPT, and will continue to coordinate and communicate with them on exactly what that will look like. So next, I'll walk through what construction in the park may look like with safety measures and best management practices in place. Again, we have a couple images and definitions that correspond with the next few slides. So first, a cofferdam. You might recall this from last June, but it is a temporary watertight structure intended to facilitate in-water construction work. These are typically constructed of sheet piling, and they essentially prevent water from entering or leaving that enclosed area in the river or in any water body. Cofferdam construction for Hudson Tunnel project is currently underway out in the middle of the river, if you've seen that. And then on the right here, you see a cross-section of the ground stabilization activities that are going to be occurring within the cofferdam. So where the cofferdam is in place, the ground would be stabilized by mixing cement in with the soil, resulting in hardened soil to facilitate tunneling through the area. So that's a little detail on activities sort of already underway in the river. The point in bringing that up is that this ground stabilization with the soil and concrete mixing in the cofferdam out in the river, all of which was already considered in the FEIS, that is all going to be occurring simultaneously with the obstruction removal activities at former Pier 68 and 69. So boaters will have to sort of navigate that in-water construction, which these next few graphics are snapshots in time, essentially, of potential boater paths of travel around the in-water construction zones. They are a little different and a little bit more refined than what we shared with you in June. They now show all in-water work, including that cofferdam activity, the obstruction removal activities, and then the ground stabilization at the bulkhead. They also show the currently contemplated barge staging plan, which should give you a better sense of the vessels that are going to be out on the water throughout the construction period. But again, pointing out these are conceptual, they might be refined a bit further, but they represent what we know and understand right now. So to orient yourself here, Pier 66 toward the bottom of the page with its moorings in that pale beige color, and then the heliport is just north of the proposed tunnel alignment. Here we're looking at activities happening west of the pier headline when cofferdam construction in bright yellow is progressing eastward. Obstruction removal activities west of the pier headline need to happen prior to the cofferdam installation in that area. And then the brown and red and blue and purple rectangles represent barges on the water. The pale yellow arrows originating at the Pier 66 boathouse moorings are representative paths of travel that boaters might take. So this is showing approximately the farthest that boaters would have to travel west around the cofferdam if that's the preferred path of traveling north. Then in early fall 2025, we expect to begin obstruction removal activities in the footprint of former Pier 69 while the eastern portion of the cofferdam is being installed. So boaters, again, would likely travel west around the cofferdam in order to continue north along the pier headline, rather than navigating between the two construction areas. And then later in fall 2025 and then into the winter months, obstructions would be removed in the footprint of former Pier 68, but now focusing on obstructions east of the pier headline. Ground stabilization at the bulkhead would also begin, and that's the area shown along the shore in red. That would require a smaller barge to support those activities. And similar to the previous example, boaters would likely travel west around the cofferdam and then continue north. This is the last one. Following completion of obstruction removal activities at the former piers, cofferdam construction and ground stabilization at the bulkhead would continue. To travel north, boaters may be able to sort of hug the pier headline adjacent to cofferdam construction, or if not, they would again move west around the cofferdam before continuing north. And like you saw in each case, boaters would be able to travel freely south along the pier headline. Now, in terms of safety, like we spoke about before, in-water work zones would be sectioned off with marker buoys, and those would be equipped with solar lighting. Lighting would also be used on barges. And then we'll continue to coordinate with you and HRBT and with the Coast Guard on keeping mariners notified of construction activities. Best management practices, like turbidity curtains would also be used as appropriate in order to minimize turbidity and sedimentation in the Hudson River. A water quality monitoring plan will also be implemented. And then, like I mentioned previously, safety measures in the landside portion of construction would be implemented. And that might include flaggers and physical barriers, construction fencing clad with some sort of graphically designed fence wrapping. And just to reiterate, notification would be made to the public prior to any shifting of the bike and ped paths through the area, regardless of the preferred approach to ground stabilization in the park and across 12th Ave. So the project team will maintain coordination to try to minimize disruption at the park, and will be continuing to communicate with regulatory agencies and all affected parties, including in particular with HRPT. We'll also be sending out regular boater safety alerts in coordination with the Coast Guard so that boaters are well aware of any upcoming or ongoing construction activities. A public information center staffed by a community coordinator is going to be opening this year in Manhattan. So we'll be sort of available on the ground to provide project related information and get your and community feedback. And then on top of that, GDC is going to be establishing a construction task force with local representatives to make sure that lines of communication with community members stay open. So this presentation, like I said, it'll be available online at hudsontunnelproject.com, where there will also be instructions to provide comments by emailing Kai Woltering and James Gavea at FTA. We definitely welcome your Section 4F related comments, and the comment period is going to extend the next month or so until May 12th. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Rebecca. Thanks.
I know that was a lot of information. Sam and Jake, thank you so much for going through all of that. And thank you everyone in the room and online who's listening to that. We appreciate that. And we'd be happy to, I know it's a lot, but we'd be happy to take some questions or hear some comments. We have some technical people here and others, so we'd be happy to have a conversation.
Everybody's got hands up, so I'll just do that.
Yeah.
Yes, I haven't, well, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation, very thorough, very detailed, thank you.
You're welcome.
I noticed that there are several federal agencies with whom you will be working this project throughout the time of this project. And I'm wondering if you have made any changes to your timeline based upon the significant labor reductions, staff reductions in some of these agencies. That's my first question, and I have a second one.
Okay. No, I think the short answer to that is no. We still have a very robust working relationship with both FTA and FRA and federal agencies in terms of the engagement on our project. So we're not anticipating. I mean, I can't look into a ball and say like what's going to be happening to those federal agencies in the future. I'm going to say in this moment in time, we continue to engage with them on a daily basis, if not weekly basis, on our project. And Ben, I want to make sure that I'm not overstepping there in terms of what I'm saying in terms of that engagement.
No, that's absolutely right, Rebecca. We're in constant communication with federal and state agencies to advance this project. No change in the schedule.
Right. What if something comes in the future, and that's going to affect the schedule, I think that's something that we'd be communicating with you in as real time as we can.
Very great. Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
My second question is, have you guys assessed the risk of the political risk of the Trump administration holding hostage the DOT federal funds to get some sort of movement from the governor or state of New York, as has been alleged with the congestion pricing, for example. Do you see any risk in that area for this particular project, which I think has significant federal funds involved?
We do. We have significant federal funding. We have $12 billion in federal funding. And in July, we were awarded the largest full funding grant agreement of $6.8 billion. So we are fully funded. So we have 70% federal funding, which is fantastic because then the state shares is 30%, which many years ago it was higher. We were recently in DC with our CEO having meetings with members on both sides of the aisle and both in the Senate and representatives, congressional members. We have about 20,000 union jobs happening right now. And we went into all of those conversations focusing on the jobs that we're producing, the jobs that are going to come, which is about over 95,000 jobs that this one project will create. And all of that was received very well. We have no indication right now that anything is going to change for this project when it comes to the Trump administration. And I appreciate the question. I appreciate the question.
You're up.
Sure. Likewise, thank you for the presentation. I did have one question on timeline. You were kind of going through the timeline slides. At what, I guess, anticipated point in the future do you anticipate moving the vehicle and bike lane to accommodate the construction work near 30th Street?
So the land side and the water side are tied to this NEPA reevaluation. So I don't think the earliest anything of that would happen would be in the fall. I think October. Can my team? Yes, I see Ben nodding his head. That's the answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. It doesn't matter. Choose.
The temp services, how will they be maintained and what are they, because what we don't want is a choppy bike lane or walk lane. What's the material? How's that gonna be maintained?
You know, TJ, I don't know if you have, I don't have that answer at my fingertips. TJ, I don't know if you have any information about that in terms of maintenance of the bike and pedestrian lane.
Yeah,
If not, we can come back.
Yeah, they're gonna have to regularly maintain it. It's part of their contract. They need to do regular inspection and maintenance of any travel way that includes roadway and bike lane. The material will be asphalt. And they need to have a section. There's a required section in the plans. There's some depth. Don't quote me on it. It's usually 6 to 8 inches of sub base that goes below a 4 to 6 inch depth of asphalt. And that'll be moved pretty often, not so often for the bike and walkway, but often enough for the travel way where those are going to be replaced probably when they're being shifted across the lanes, if that option is chosen, every 6 to 8 months or so. So there's going to be new pavement pretty regularly throughout the project.
PJ, obviously we've seen temp pavement in the city and it is always in bad shape because of the cost, because they know they gotta move it multiple times. So we wanna make a point that it is maintained, that there's striping, that it's a priority, because it's a major pathway for us. Thank you. Another one, now that they're taking out, the old pier islands, Chair, what are we getting back on $26 billion? I would assume in the future, are they planning that we could go over this tunnel on top of it to have another pier, to have another park? We brought this up in the past. We are not benefiting at all. These are commercial trains, right? Commuter trains Our west side of our neighborhood is not getting anything in place here. All we heard was they will work with HRPT to replace what was there. That's not good enough.
Yeah, and
Ma'am, I'm not done. We've been wanting to fix that area where the helipad is. And I haven't heard anything about that, what's gonna be put there. Now, what's gonna be said is Hudson River Park Trust is gonna have to find the money to try to go fix that later. Where this funding should be coming from this project. We brought it up before, and that worries me, we're not getting anything there. And then I got one other futuristic question.
Is it related to this one you just laid out, or you?
No, I got another one besides this.
So let's go with the one you just laid out. The presenters and Leslie and I, thinking of you, of course, asked the same question you just asked. And the committee is concerned with that. They gave an answer, which I should ask them to repeat. It may be the best we're gonna get. I mean, I can give you an answer, but who the hell am I, right? They should be giving me.
Well, I mean, I believe we should have our state senator representative here. Our local council members should be, usually they're online. We have to get something. They're taking out old piers. We are the waterfront. It needs to be activated. I love the tunnel. I'm very happy about this project. It's amazing, but we need some more benefit for the public.
Well, I'm glad you all are, I'll speak to the microphone, to this camera. I'm glad you all are hearing this question. It's one that Leslie and I raised. You began to answer it, and if you have an update on us, that would be really wonderful.
yeah, I talked to Leslie the other day, and I talked to Jesse this morning. So unless what we can do is, I know we are restoring the bulkhead. That is something that we will be doing, and that in terms of the park improvements, we have funding, and then we talked to Leslie and Jesse about this, that we could work together with you to help identify other things that could be done in the park area that our construction is happening. So I don't have a set list of what that is right now. What I do know is that we will be able to provide funding in this area, and we will be able to work with you and HRPT to identify benefits that we could bring in the area that we are working. And I don't know if anybody else who's on my team wants to add anything to that, but we can absolutely do that. I thought you mentioned something else that's slipping my mind right now in terms of a benefit.
Rebecca, it's not just about the area that you're working, you're impacting the whole district there. So I don't want to be identified that it's this 50 feet by 100 that you're gonna elect money for. That's not what we're looking for. And I'm not just talking about inland, the bulkhead you would have to fix anyway, so to me, that's a non-topic. What it's about is the waterway. It's about where the piles are. It's about you guys being there now to put in new piles so we could have a pier with a park, because you're there. It should be part of the whole program. I'm not saying, that we have an historic. To me, all those should be activated. I don't have a problem with them coming out so they could do their work, but they should be replaced so we could have a park there.
Marty, I'm sorry, just a quick thing. Quentin, he has his hand up in the public. Let me know when you want to bring him over.
And then Marty, I have one more other thing, because I know they can't answer that.
Well, they were about to say something, so I'd like to hear it. They weren't.
Who, me or Quentin? I'm sorry.
I need to be aware that there are members of the public who ask questions, and I will go to them. The question is your thinking about restoration limited only to the area that you're working on, or does it, and we're saying it should, go beyond that area to benefit the community in other ways, including thinking about restoring the two piers?
Unless it was identified during the EIS process, if it's not in the EIS document, that is not something that we can do. And the area, we are talking about the area in which we are doing construction.
So this is what it gets from. This is where it gets political. The EIS is the environmental impact statement. We're looking at the bigger project, the $26 billion, Marty, right? Sure.
And I just want to clarify one thing. It's 16. I don't know, but
16.
it's 16
Sorry.
billion. That's I just wanted
I
to
had
make it.
26, I don't know why I had 16, because I thought it was higher than that because of the Jersey portion of it.
No.
So, Marty, Chair, we're not getting anything again. We should be looking at, and you guys know what I'm gonna say, right? There's two piers there. It should be two parks, and one should be commercial, so HRPT is taking in money, which we desperately need. And you know what I believe, it's a heliport now. I wanna, like the rest of the world, we need a drone center. We need a center to look to the future of what transportation is. And this is the transportation project. And it should be looked at as the totality, not just the tunnel. And I also, one more question is, are these tracks being put in the old school train tracks, or could they accommodate high speed?
I think they're just regular trains. They're not high-speed trains, as I understand it.
And that's the problem again, guys, right? The rest of the country, and we are trying to push high speed. We are spending $16 billion with a capacity that we're building like horse stables for cars. And now we're putting in an old train track that's not gonna affect us for the next 100 years. It's needs to be looked at. It's to me, we're literally going backwards.
Thank you. Good questions, and it should be, these 2 points should be included in whatever letter we write, whether we write one now or later. I'm gonna go to Candace, and then I'm gonna go to you, because it's the way it matters.
So my question was, thank you guys for the presentation, and I'm glad to hear about the funding as well. The road closures, the construction means method you were talking about, you said 29th Street was gonna be closed. What is the bicycle lanes gonna be still open? How long is that? Is it gonna be permanently closed? Is that where you're storing construction? 29th Street.
So 29th Street, because this was something that we did because we understood that the EMS station on, I think it's lot 12, block 675 was a priority for the community. And that was originally going to be the construction laydown area for the contractor. So instead of the contractor using that in order to not impede the progress of your EMS station, we worked out that we could have the 29th Street be the construction staging area, but the bike lane will still be open. Emergency vehicles will be able to pass through, and sanitation will be able to get through, and Con Ed will still be able to do the operations out of their yard. So we did that to make sure that we didn't preclude the EMS station from moving forward, and that 29th Street could be used for the construction laydown area.
How long is it going to be closed?
Years.
Yeah,
Years.
many years.
I just wanted a clear explanation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
They can make 29th Street into a park.
They could.
I'm sorry?
29th Street could become a park afterwards. It's already closed off.
I use
Right. I mean, it's kind of interesting when you take a.
That's in their area of construction, Marty. Maybe we can get technical.
Yeah,
Know what I mean?
29th Street's the way Marty gets on the highway.
but I'm just thinking about the traffic that's gonna be coming on 30th Street now, straight down 30th,
It'll
which
be
is where I
years and
live.
years and years, and people just get used to it. Now we can maybe have a park, and it's in their area of,
Yeah, there.
yeah, maybe we get that.
By the time the park or whatever is built, we'll get used to
You're
driving.
really strong, Marty, don't worry.
We'll get used to driving in another direction. I know, I have a car, I'm sorry.
Three questions. First one is you showed the duration, and you alluded to the fact that it's more or less the project started. Like, when's the part that's going to impact our residents, like in terms of noise and air quality? That's my first question.
So they're
When's the
starting
project?
some early works right now within block 675, so contained with that area. And I know you have the Hudson Yards concrete casing work not too far from there. So they're doing some early works that is boring works. And I expect there's a Quonset hut on that location that I expect to be demolished in the coming weeks. That those are areas in which they have, air monitoring, noise monitoring, those type of controls in place. They are been putting out monitors in the area as we speak. If they're not all done, they should all be done soon. I'd say that the work that we're talking about here, in terms of the land side and the water side, again, that's in October. We think that, and we're getting more clarity from the contractor all the time in terms of the closure of 29th Street. That might be later on this summer. And if anybody else on my team has a better timeline for that, please speak up. But everything that we're talking about here is in the fall. 29th Street and the digging of the shaft on block 675, I expect this late spring, early summer.
Like, is the public aware of, I mean, these are gonna be really loud noises, I suspect, and it's 24 hours, 7 days a week. So I mean, I don't know. I wonder if there's some communication, like in terms of what to expect from our elected.
Yeah, so we are preparing a pretty substantial deck that we're hoping to share with you by the end of May. So everyone knows what's happening. It's not just particular to this 4F process, but kind of the bigger picture. Because we had to start a comment period here, we wanted to make sure that we have this conversation. But yes, you should be expecting a larger briefing from us that kind of gives all that picture, what that's going to be happening for the next several months.
Second question is around, so our district is having major projects happening in this one little area that we're talking about. We've got the Western Rail Yards, we've got Port Authority, we've got our Manhattan Cruise Terminal that's like getting updated. Like, I mean, it just seems like it might be, I mean, the impact to our area in terms of traffic disruption to noise to air quality is like insane. I mean, you guys are aware of these other projects. How is it all gonna overlap and like work together, I guess? Is there some scenario planning around that?
I'll say this for the bus terminal project. I mean, one of our partners is the Port Authority, and they're the construction manager for this project, for the Manhattan Tunnel project that we're talking about here. So we're in regular conversations with them all the time. I have regular conversations with City Hall in ways that we need to be engaging with their agencies and any of the work that they are doing. If there is a project or a point of contact or someone that you think we should be engaging with, we're happy to do that. We are very aware of everything, or I think we're as aware as we can be of everything that's happening in your district, and have a tremendous amount of sensitivity to that, understanding that you've also had a lot of construction even before this, and then we're coming and other projects are coming. So we engage and coordinate as well as much as we can, but we're always looking to improve that. And if there's a point that you think we need to be doing, we're happy to have that conversation and do it.
But I want to answer your question. When they did the environmental impact study, they did not, those projects are not in their report.
Right.
So just to answer clearly, they were not considered.
The third question is around like, so I suspect that in terms of the walk, because you mentioned noise and air, but like there's going to be massive effects to the water quality through this construction process. Like, what's the restoration to like the water quality that's going to happen post construction?
I think we have some information about the turbidity that we have included in this. I don't know if we want to put that back up to just refresh everyone's memory about what we had there.
So while Sam does that, sorry.
I'll just say this and let you go. that, the information in your deck about turbidity was about testing while the project is going on. The question that's being asked is about, what about cleanup after the project is over?
Correct. Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, when the project is over, there won't be any more work going on. We will be testing through the end of construction and a period after per New York State DEC requirements. We have to get a permit from New York State DEC, and that will include best management practices and the water quality monitoring plan, which will likely go beyond the construction period as DEC usually requires. So as we go through that permitting process, we can certainly keep this group apprised of how that permitting process in the river itself, with the active construction, with the Hudson River ground stabilization, where we are also impacting the river bottom. We have a 5-year monitoring plan post-construction. We'll likely have a similar monitoring for the pile pulling. But I don't want to get ahead of the permitting process, but we do have to monitor to make sure that the ecology of the river returns to the current state, and that the river bottom is essentially flourishing after our disturbance.
Talk to us a little bit about when the monitoring indicates there's something wrong. What's your process?
Sure. So we have 2 types of monitoring on the river. One is to make sure that we're monitoring for fish, to make sure that they're not getting into the coffer dam area, and 2 is the water quality. When there is an exceedance, we do regular monitoring and regular reporting when there's an exceedance, or if there's a case of God forbid, a spill or some type of contaminant gets into the water. Immediate actions taken, stop work is taken to make sure that we implement a recovery plan and best practices to ensure that one, the incident doesn't happen again, and we understand what the source of that is, of that exceedance, and 2, making sure that we're making sure that the water quality returns to the appropriate levels.
Okay, so it includes remediation on top of the monitoring.
Right. So if we spill something, we will clean it up. If we're disturbing the river bottom, we will essentially monitor it. There's tidal action in the river, so we expect the sediment to cover the area that we're working in, or in the case of pulling piles, the sediment naturally getting replaced into the area that we disturbed. So it's a little bit of a natural restoration on the river bottom. But if it isn't a natural restoration, then we will have to take actions with consultation from New York State DEC, and if we're in the portion of the within the pier headline, with Hudson River Park Trust.
What's happening with the dredged material?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
The material that's being dredged, is that being taken off? I would assume that's contaminated.
It will be tested and taken off site.
How will we know what's happening? Will your monitoring be public in any way?
We can certainly look into that.
Yeah, Marty, we're happy to look into that and how we can share that information. You mentioned that you were going to write a letter, Marty.
That's one of the possibilities. We already did write a letter.
Yeah.
And June 12th, 24.
Right.
And some of the concerns that the committee is now expressing are already mentioned in this letter. So we have to figure out if we write a letter, how it's different than the one we already wrote.
Okay.
Are they asking for a letter of support?
You're not asking, no.
Oh, no.
They're not asking. They're not asking,
No, I just- you would-
what we're getting today from them, and I think it's wonderful, I mean, I really mean it, thank you for this presentation. What we're getting today is an update on what their thinking is and how the information that we received a year ago has somewhat changed. Like one of the big changes is that bridge that was gonna go over the highway is no longer there, they're gonna do that underground. I think I have that correct, if I'm wrong, correct me, please.
You got it.
And the other thing that's a little different in my, without looking at notes, is that the shafts that they're gonna be drilling are both moved a little bit and different shapes, and they're not sure what the final configuration of that's gonna be.
You got it, Marty.
Is there another major change that I'm missing that I should have articulated?
The
Guys?
potential for the ground stabilization to be conducted from ground surface rather than from the shaft. So the contractor may do the lane shifting with 12th Avenue North and southbound lanes bumping out west into the heliport portion of the park rather than using shafts to go horizontally and ground stabilize that way.
And therefore no shafts at all.
Correct.
Therefore savings, therefore new park. That's how I read.
We should add a part.
And yeah, so that no shafts would be less spoils that are being removed.
Yeah, that sounds good. I remember that we've been asking you to remove spoils by barge, and you've given all sorts of reasons why that probably won't happen, which disappoints us, but there it is.
Yet they're using barges everywhere. And yet they built little island with barges. So it's hard to fathom, it's really.
Chris?
Oh.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
I have to do both.
Yes. Marty?
Committee online, which
Yes.
is you, Chris, you go first, and then I have to ask Janine, who's on public.
Thank you. Actually, I was just about to do that. We're talking a lot about transportation. We have a member of the Transportation Committee in the attendees list, David Warren, and I'm sure he has questions or a request.
So you're not asking a question, you're just saying, go to the public.
David Warren, please. Yes.
And Janine is gonna bring him over.
Yeah, he's over.
David, go ahead.
Hi, good
Welcome.
evening.
I
Thank you.
want to know before you start going that our esteemed co-chair is online, her school event is obviously over.
I didn't hear that quite. Okay, so you mean Leslie? And Marty, it's good.
David.
Yeah, it's good to see you guys. First I want to support what Brad had to say. It was terrific. I support that wholeheartedly about the tracks. My question is, and this is a first world problem, so I get it from the start, is the bike lane on 29th Street is going to be cut off. That's an odd street. The city plans them based on even and odd streets across town bike lanes. Is there a plan to put it on another odd street across town?
Oh, we're keeping it. We're keeping the bike lane on 29th.
Oh, you are keeping the 20th?
Yes.
Okay, I misunderstood
No,
you then.
I'm glad you asked that in case if I don't want anyone to think that bike lane is going to be maintained on 29th.
Okay, and also since it's involving other things, thank you very much. That was my major first world problem. Are you going to?
I don't think that's a first world problem. I think the bike network in New York City is very important.
Yes,
and a lot of
yes.
people use it. So I just want to say that I think that's a very important thing that the city has.
So I guess at some point you'll consult with Transportation Committee also with Christine and Jesse.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you again. I really support what you're doing. It's once again, I just hope we get the tracks correct. That's a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, we can get back in terms of getting back to information of like kind of why we're doing what we're doing in terms of like, we're going into existing Penn Station in terms of high-speed track, but I appreciate the question and I appreciate the forward thinking there. I get it. I get it from both Brad and David. Thank you.
We'd be very interested in the follow-up on that.
On the, yeah, sure.
Anybody else?
I don't want my dinghy dock to get lost.
Hey, everyone.
Don't want my dinghy dock to get lost. You know, I've been saying all along, obviously you don't know it, but I've been saying it all along, that we need a dinghy dock for people that come in to these marinas and then they want to go into the city. Now, if they have, these don't cost very much at all. You can buy them prefab and, you know, that kind of thing for the dinghies. And you can charge for them as well, and you make a little money. So.
What you're basically saying is that part of the discussion of restoration of the bulkhead and of the piers should include a dinghy dock.
Yeah, but you know, it doesn't, it shouldn't have to be that expensive, because you've got them prefab almost already.
But Gwen, we've asked repeatedly, can we put more buoys out there for boats to be hooked up on the river? And then you need the dinghy to go get them, right? We've been told repeatedly that we can't do that.
That you can't anchor them, no, you can't anchor them in a navigation zone.
No, what I'm saying is, so if you wanna have a whole boat network out there sitting on their buoys hooked up where there's we've asked to expand the field of boating there, and we've been told no.
No, but you don't even have to ask anybody if you're in the right place, I mean.
But if you're gonna pick somebody up in a dinghy, you have to.
Yes, you do, you're right.
Exactly. The point, we could have a dinghy there, but we need, if there's nobody there to pick up, then.
Yes, that's right.
That's what I'm getting at, right?
But that involves more permits.
Sure, that's what I'm getting at, and then, yeah, we were told many times that these old piers had to stay in the water like that. They were landmarked, we couldn't, I'm fine for taking them out, believe me, I'm not. And we were told we couldn't touch those areas.
I have never heard that.
Yes, and that's why they're sitting there like that. And it's a waste. Outside the Whitney, where you put the fake thing where the old pier, you know, he's got the steel that looks like with the pier used to look.
Yeah.
My point is, we've asked repeatedly, why can't we take that over? Why can't we make a park there? Oh, we can't touch those piers or landmark. We can't touch them. Yet, when we need to touch them and move them for a very important project, it's not a problem at all. So, we would love to activate the water, of course, Glenn, we would love to. But this is, again, it's the politics of it, and right now this is happening and we should play the game.
Well,
and the piece that you're both talking about and have been in this conversation is an activation of that water area after this project is over.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. I'm sorry, it's Leslie here. And I jumped, I apologize for jumping on late and but my event was over early. I just wanted to remind everyone, Gwen, we hear you loud and clear, and others, there have been other organizations have talked about that, and I know it's not part of this project, but if you remember the letter we just wrote about Pier 94, we included that loud and clear. Just FYI, just as a point, because I know they're gonna do a whole renovation of 94, excuse me, 92. And we included that there would be small marine vessels and craft be allowed to be there. I don't know if that helps in this instance, but I just wanted to give you the heads up that that was prominent in our letter.
Okay, you could give them a length if you want to, that's usually how they say it, you know, under 16 feet or under 12 feet or whatever they wanna make it.
Well, we're now talking about two separate projects, Pier 92 being one, and there's a long conversation that's still gonna have to occur as to what the configuration will be after this project winds down, and that's not soon.
Yeah. Right.
I'm just keeping it in people's mind.
But it's a June letter, right? The small boat craft docking, the dinghies, they're in the June letter, like, we're on record having articulated this prior, I believe.
I don't remember it.
If not, it might.
Huh?
if there is an opportunity to memorialize that, if it is not in the June letter, perhaps it is appropriate in a future letter.
That's right. I don't
I
think
want to
it's-
clarify, I just want to clarify the piers that we're talking about here is that, and I'm familiar with other piers that have been rehabilitated and made into, parks and whatnot. These piers are essentially not visible at all anymore. Most of the piles, and we think there may be upwards of, hundreds of piles. They're all submerged in the mud. So they've either been cut away over the years or they've deteriorated over the years. But essentially, Pier 68 and 69, if not for historic maps and some piles right near the bulkhead, they're essentially invisible. And the piles that are in the mud, they're pretty deep in the mud, in the silt of the river. So I just wanted to clarify. Certainly interested in hearing about potential opportunities working with Hudson River Park and the trust on improvements in terms of the restoration of the park area and potential improvements on the water side. But these piers are certainly you go out there that you wouldn't be able to tell that they were ever there.
Thank you for that.
Well, they often tie them to a pier, the Dinghy Dock Park, because it's lower in the water. And so I don't know if this is even appropriate for it. I just don't want people to forget about that. That's all, because we really need one here, and people are always saying in New York, we don't ever go into New York because it's too unfriendly.
No,
New York?
Gwen, I think Gwen, what he was saying there is, just because the public can't see it, we know it's there. We're on the Parks Department, we know the piers are there, and what we're saying is, this is a money grab, and we like to grab some money for a park. And it's a transportation hub, and maybe we should look at it that way as well. To bring in some money for HRPT, but you said already, so I don't need that.
But the question is, does a letter come out of this, or you mentioned something about a comment period? Is there a comment period that we're facing?
Yeah, we have a comment period until May 12th.
The comment period ends when?
May 12th?
Comments, she's not giving comments.
Marty, I think we should be on the record as a board that we wanted more out of this project at least. I don't want to be associated with, hey, we didn't try. I'm not saying it could be done, but we should at least say publicly to our electives, what's going on here?
So we don't need to repeat the letter of last year, but we do need to say.
I mean, I think you and the chair, more than obviously talking to people, but I do think we should maybe make a statement and say, let's pull besides this tunnel, which needs, and I'm happy it's being done.
And then the major focus.
We need to have such a more.
The major focus of such a letter would be, what are the community benefits that go within the footprint of the construction and outside of it?
If that's a motion, I second that, Brad.
Would that be able to get us the park and their, we can fight for it and their means and their boundaries? Would that be, could we work with that?
This is a real Chuck Schumer question, to be honest.
It's a letter that goes not only to the team that's made the presentation today, but it's a letter that goes to all our.
I think it goes to our Senator Chuck Schumer, who got the money for this project, which is amazing. And we should ask, what else are we getting out of here? They're there, Dee. They're there.
I'm sorry, may I interject here? I had a briefing with Rebecca and some others on her team about the ask that we were making for an outside community benefit, which is, I don't want to say customary, but is not unusual for this type of a project, especially with the billions and billions of dollars that is being allocated to this project. we were talking about it for months. We talked about it on Zoom, Rebecca. We talked about it on the phone, right? I even tried to get you drunk one night at a bar and talk about it and get some money out of you. Say it in a public meeting. I didn't, not really, but we were trying to see, Ryan, trying to see what we could do to get some money or just some benefit for the community for this. I don't want to say gross inconvenience, but just everything that's been going on and will go on for years in our district. And finally, the other day, I think, right? Yesterday, maybe even the other day, we had a Zoom meeting, and Janine, I believe, was on, or was it Jesse? I think Janine was on.
Yeah, Janine was on.
And they were saying that because it wasn't in the EIS, that it has to be limited to the footprint of the project. So at least the money or the whatever the project we would ask for has to be within the footprint of their project, which is pretty wide, but we can kind of talk about that, discuss it, be creative with it.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to try and do right now. Once we get the big footprint, and I think, Rebecca, you said you were working on that to send to me or send to us, and I'll send to Mari too. And then we can see what are the actual physical parameters we're working in and then what we can kind of massage to make it fit and what that would look like.
Yeah, Brad, I don't want to give the impression that we're not going to come here and have that type of conversation or that type of engagement or that type of coordination with you. I don't have like a full parameter of that and all the things that could include. I think that's more of a conversation with HRPT and all of you and other members of the community. But I don't want to leave you with the impression that we don't want to bring some benefit to the area based on the project that we're doing. I think what I'm trying to say here is that we see that as a collaborative process within the footprint that we're working with you and HRPT, and we just want to be very mindful of that.
And right, Brad, you're right. Hold on, Brad, you're right. The bulkheads, all that stuff doesn't count. This and cleaning it up after they leave doesn't count. That was all going to be done anyway. This is an extra added on benefit that actually should have been included years ago when they first went through this originally, but was overlooked, I guess.
But the old piers were there and they're working right there. So to me, that's within the scope of where they're working.
So, in your vision, Leslie, is this a letter or is this a continued negotiation?
I mean, we can definitely include it in the letter that we're aware of it, and that's what but I think we're going to talk to Noreen, we'll talk to River Park Trust, see what their priorities are, if we can work with them. I never think that I shouldn't say never, but I usually don't think it's not worth including in a letter, at least just to memorialize and say, we understand, but we can talk about the letter writing maybe, when you talk about the letter, unless you're doing that now. I'm sorry. Like I said, I jumped on later, but, no, I think we can definitely write a paragraph or a few lines just saying we understand that we're talking about this. It's an ongoing conversation and we're going to find, a mutually agreeable either location, project, funds that everyone, the community will be happy with.
Leslie,
So
are you making a motion?
there has been a proposal for a letter and it's been seconded. And I propose that, and I have a feeling the room agrees, but we'll take a vote. I have a feeling that, the letter is going to be a short one, but it should say, it should reassert that the community benefit should occur. If it's restricted to the footprint of the project, that's a fairly large footprint, including 29th Street and the piers, and that some thing should come out to benefit the community in the form of a park, possibly.
Well, let's just say park. We should just say what we want.
No, because we don't know what we want yet. We don't know what we
Possibly a park.
I also, what we fought for on this committee for years and years and told it couldn't happen was the dollar charge to everybody coming in on a cruise ship. I think we should put in there, we want $1 from Amtrak of every ticket that's bought to help the environment. we got it from the cruise ships, and I don't see why we can't get it here. We should at least start talking about it.
But the train,
That may not be
the
part of
trains
this.
that are going through the tunnel are like a form of commuter transportation.
Yeah, that may
This
not be-
isn't like a recreational thing.
Well, no, it's
We
two
don't
things.
buy train tickets, we do not want them to be more expensive.
No, I'm not saying the commuter train, the Amtrak train, which is different.
I use Amtrak to commute to my job. Many people use Amtrak for commuting purposes. I think that
Then
there's
I
not.
don't think we might pay an extra $1 to help the environment.
Quentin, I see you.
I do think that that is, I would oppose that. I think many people would oppose Amtrak's like passenger money going
It is
into.
passenger, this is passenger.
It's the same thing what's happening with congestion pricing. I mean.
No, it's very different, Brad, and you're misconstruing two different things.
I'm just saying, if you're making the argument of converting commuters and you use it, then were you against congestion pricing?
No, but this is going too far afield.
I don't think so. I'm proposing it.
And I would just articulate that I do not believe that that is somewhere we want to go as a board.
Guys, I think there's a motion on the floor that was seconded, so I think we have to, Marty, you have to address the motion.
Okay,
forward.
and the motion is that we write a letter making sure that we have parks replaced in the footprint, and the footprint is a large footprint, not just what we saw on the screen, the narrow Hudson River Park.
Certainly both.
And that the letter shouldn't be written before there's a consultation with the Hudson River Park itself, the folks, so that the letter doesn't sound stupid. Because we don't know what's going on, and we don't write a letter that doesn't. And if you all agree with that, then we'll move forward on the letter, and if we hit roadblocks, we'll let you know.
Marty, I don't even think we should say the footprint. I think we should just say, we have been informed that it's limited what we can use, focus for community benefit. I don't want to close ourselves off. We should just mention that it's being discussed and it's an ongoing discussion, and we are still in negotiations with them, but that we fully expect there will be a community benefit outside the scope that's of the project that's already been, I don't want to say promised, negotiated, whatever the words you want to use. Whatever that benefit is, we don't know yet. We don't know. That will be weeks, maybe months in, what we could figure out.
Before we take a vote, Quentin from the council member's office has had his hand up for a while. You want to let him speak before we take a vote?
Yeah, let's recognize Quentin.
Hey, everyone. Yeah. First off, sorry I'm not there in person, but also you're welcome. I'm not there in person, because if I were, all of you would get incredibly sick. So hopefully look forward to mending up and being back actually, in flesh and blood over here soon. But did want to just chime in. Oh, sorry.
Thanks for not
It's
being
funny. I get that a lot from people. But did want to just chime on in to say, look, I initially raised my hand, I believe, it was long enough. I forget. Someone said, want the council member's office to be here. So I want to make sure that folks knew, I've, been here, been listening, taking on notes, anything, needed, reach on out. And also I'm excited to, personally thrilled to see this, move forward despite, that you think that there won't be that many negative impacts from the Trump administration, because I've gotten asked that a couple of times as well myself. So I just want to say, for me, and I think I can comfortably say from the council member, that's always welcome and exciting news. And, personally, as a very frequent Amtrak rider to friends and family points south, I'm just excited to see it all happen. So just want to say, hey, and haven't abandoned you all. I'm just lying here coughing my head off.
Get better.
Well, Quentin, it's nice to meet you, and when you feel better, I think it would be great if we met in person and had some coffee and talk about stuff. But I'm glad that we're able to provide, from some reassurance from where we are now in the project and how we're moving forward. And I appreciate everyone's excitement, and I also appreciate everyone's curiosity in terms of like their engagement with us. We are here to do that, and we're trying to message as much as we can about this project as often as we can, because we understand the importance for the region. We also understand it's very impactful in where you live and work and raise your families and have friends and do everything. So I just want to say that from where I'm coming from and from all my experience working at New York City DOT, you can never have enough engagement. And I just want you to know that even I just have a tremendous amount of sensitivity to the work that we're going to need to do and how we're going to need to partner with all of you.
Thank
And
you
it
for that,
only-
Rebecca. That's fantastic, and your presentation has been fantastic. I hope that we are going to write a letter that the committee hasn't voted yet, but I think it's going to say yes. That we are going to write a letter that hopefully will be as friendly to your project, because we think the project is an important one, and will memorialize, I'm using the word that Leslie used before, that will memorialize our request for when the project is over, that the area be left better than it was found, and that the community receive a significant benefit.
We want to make sure that it's left better than we found it too.
All in favor of that letter?
Aye.
Any opposed, any objections, anybody present not eligible? I did that all at once.
You saw that everyone had voted yes.
I saw nobody. Go ahead, Brad.
The public, area information, is that a kiosk? Are you gonna rent from HRPT? And do we charge 200,000 a month for that?
No, we definitely got a better deal than that, Brad, but I appreciate the questions.
So,
but it's, you're making a good point.
The Intrepid that pays $1, are you?
No, it's more, it's less than $200,000 a month, but more than $1 a month. I can tell you that.
Okay.
It's definitely challenging to find affordable community space in Manhattan, but we found a space on 9th Avenue that I'm hoping that is planned to be open this summer. And, you know, when we do, that'll obviously we'll be contacting you, and, you know, maybe we could, you know, I never got drunk, you know, maybe we can have some drinks over it too, over on 9th Avenue and hang out together. But yeah, that's where the community.
I don't want to get you in trouble, Rebecca. I don't want to get you in trouble.
Yeah. Sorry, Brad, go ahead.
Is it HRPT property or no?
That our community center will be on?
Yeah,
No.
that really is unfortunate. I'm being serious. They're dying to collect rent. They're gonna lose the rent from the helicopter pad now. That's a significant, that's 1.3
But
million
they're
a
also
year.
probably have found that exists.
If I could just touch on that, we the project will be paying HRPT for for the time that we're spending in the heliport, and to make up for their lost revenue from the heliport.
That's a really great thing to bring up. That's good to hear.
Very good.
Well, I believe they raised the rent with that.
And this has been, I would say, a robust discussion. We do have one more item to talk about, which might also lead to a robust discussion.
Yes.
And so I don't want to say goodbye to them until I know that we're finished asking them questions. We really appreciate your kindness, your presentation. We appreciate, the definitions that you put in the deck this time, so that people would, so that I would understand what a cofferdam is. I didn't in your last presentation, and this one, it was perfectly clear. So I thank you very much for your listening to us and for making us clear a presentation, and for dealing with our committee. We are an exciting group of people that have lots of opinions, and we let it all hang out.
That's exactly what we expect from New Yorkers, Marty. I was looking at the deck at 6 o'clock this morning. I'm like, where's that cofferdam definition? So I'm so glad that you noticed it and appreciated it. And I just want to say, I know we said this before, but I want to thank all of you for your time. I know this is kind of like the beginning of a long-term relationship between us and you, and we look forward to building on that. And we just very much thank you for your support for this very important project. And, you know, that's it. Thank you. And I will let you get on to the EIS for NYCHA, but I hope everyone has a nice weekend. And thank you.
Yours is a perfect last word. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next item.
They should have a job training for the higher local laborers, by the way. We used to ask for that on land use.
Yeah, we did.
Any of the big Hudson truck jobs, we would put in every, like, show us that you put
I don't think we asked for that in the.
Wait, I'm sorry, I'm missing. Wait, I'm sorry, was that a question for me, Brad? I might have missed that.
Yeah, actually it was.
Of course,
The thing that just came up.
Go apply to get some training.
The thing that just came up was, are you hiring local people to do the work in and around this project?
You know, we have, you know, what I can share with you is that we have a really robust procurement page that we put together that we try to, and we have a procurement portal. So I don't know if I can say exactly that I know that we're hiring, you know, people in the neighborhood, but I know that we are trying to match up contractors with local subs as much as we can. And we have this whole procurement process so people can know who the shortlisted firms are, shortlisted contracts, and they can contact them. We've done a lot of local industry engagement. We've had several right down at the American Museum of Jewish Heritage and on the other side of the river, and trying to engage with contractors and local firms as much as possible. I don't have a number off the top of my head, Brad, but I know that we have done a lot of local industry engagement to try and make those connections for people, because we know it can be harder for smaller firms.
No, we get it. I mean, I'm used to the bid process, certain minorities, I get that. No, what I was suggesting, we've done this on the land use committee in big developments. We asked the contractor or the developer, or you guys here, to set up an office where it's an intake to take in local people that live in the area and say, hey, I want job training, I want to be attached to the union, I live in the neighborhood, here's my license, I want to have priority to at least get a skill set out of this 10-year plan.
And we've talked about being able to hold kind of engagement out of that facility on 9th Avenue that we were talking about that will facilitate the engagement that you are describing right now.
I mean, it would just come down to, hey, you don't have to be in the union to be the guy doing the security. I mean, like, there's a lot of jobs that are gonna be happening, which is fantastic. I'd like the locals to at least get a shot and some training at it.
Noted.
And that's great.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to keep on crashing your party. I'm going to let you move on, but thank you so much.
That was an important exchange. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate that. Take care, everybody. Have a nice weekend.
All right. I have I have had a really, let me get my other papers in front of me. I have had a really exciting time the last couple of days. Reading the several chapters that are in the EIS. Have any of you looked at it significantly? Yeah, thank you. I've gotten some comments from folks, but not as many as I'd hoped. It is dreadful reading. Absolutely horrible. There are about 8 or 10 chapters, I didn't count them, that relate to our committee. I would say open space, shadows, natural resources, hazardous material, water and sewage, solid waste and sanitation, energy. There's a little bit in transportation, but maybe that's not ours, maybe that's another committee's. Air quality, greenhouse gas, and I'm not really sure about noise abatement and public health. They may be somewhere else, but noise abatement might be. My own summary of my reading, I've been trying to think after reading all this material. I've been trying to think, what do I say to you about my own impression of what I have read, because I'm frankly overwhelmed by it. And so I'm going to give you a little, very small piece of it. In the chapter on greenhouse gas, on page 10, they say the following. The permanently affordable commitment together, which is the PACT project partner, is also contemplating incorporating solar voltaic systems for generating some on-site power. But the feasibility of its implementation has not yet been determined at this time. Now, that one paragraph captures for me the bunch of stuff that I had trouble with in this. First of all, solar voltaic is buried in the document. And you know that we ask for solar voltaic no matter what's going on, but it's buried in the document. And the second part of it is the feasibility has not yet been determined at this time. So we'll hang this in front of you, but we're not yet talking about doing it. That you can apply to a whole lot of stuff that's in this in the EIS. And in order for me to make more sense of it, I need to reread parts of it or concentrate on a part of it or assign parts of it for people to read. Our task tonight, Leslie, correct me, are you still there? Our task tonight isn't to vote on anything on this. It is to get enough feedback from you all so that I can go beyond what I just said in giving information to what our position is to the Chelsea Land Use Committee, on which I also happen to sit, but that's not relevant for comments, remarks, reactions. What did you see?
I mean, one, and this is just very big picture, but there is an adverse impact finding of noise and solutions or potential ways to abate that. But I think we should want to see, especially, you know, as folks in the surrounding neighborhood, we should want to see more information and better mitigations for that adverse impact as to limit that for the surrounding community. I know that noise, I would say, is a DEP issue, so we'll call it.
But the answer that they would give to your statement is that we're doing everything that we're legally bound to do to keep the noise down.
But there is still despite the mitigations, there's still a finding of an adverse impact, which is not true in other areas, like the mitigations they're making for air quality and other areas. So I think
I didn't see that. Did they find an adverse impact in that section?
There's no significant adverse impact put forward for air quality, operational noise, so when the buildings are actually up and running, hazardous materials, and no identified impacts in like most of the other areas. But the significant impacts include traffic impacts, pedestrian impacts, and noise impacts during construction, which will only be partially mitigated. And I understand why it's hard to fully mitigate the sound of construction, especially if it is a large site. And I think that's true regardless of whether you have a demo rebuild project or if you're ground up, or if you're just doing rehab. Like there is a substantial noise mitigation problem that the EIS is highlighting, and we should push further to see, are there further means of addressing this? And I don't know the answer to that question. This is an area where I do not have a tremendous amount of expertise, but I do think that people, like our neighbors, are going to be, myself included, will be quite disturbed by the level of construction noise if there is a finding of an adverse impact here. And, to really articulate this is going to be a problem and to see if there are other mitigations that we can take to.
I think that's perfect. I live in Penn South.
I'm sure all of your neighbors will be.
And we have had the building on 26th Street and 8th Avenue, which has had its noise.
Yeah.
And we've had the MTA project on 28th Street, which has had its noise. And it's still going on. So that's noise impact is something to bring to. Thank you.
So right in this building next door that they built, the developer stepped up and, to your point, built acoustical boxes during the demolition. Per our request, I don't want you to remember that at that time, It's a while ago now.
Which building were we
The
talking?
building that goes like this, it used to be the big concrete building that sits right across from Hudson Yards, it's kind of got the triangles to it. That was a huge amount of demolition, and they built big boxes on scaffold with noise and insulation on it to mitigate the noise of the jackhammers and the demolition going down, and they did it and it works. I have the same notes, that she came up, noise barriers or acoustic shielding around noisy operations, especially near sensitive receptors like schools and residences, you know, like, we should hammer more for it. The hours when they're gonna do loud demolition, and I just think everybody's gotta understand, this is 16 years. 16 years,
And maybe more.
okay? Yeah, to your, and I think that in itself is an environmental bad. They didn't say, you know, we could take it for 2 years, we could take it for 4, now we're taking it for 16. That really isn't addressed, the fatigue of a 16-year environmental impact on people. I just don't think that was really discussed at all. I think air quality is one. Are they gonna get rid of tier 4 diesel? Do we have, so all the machines are diesel, right? They have now machines that are electrical. Are they gonna change to diesel? Diesel count matters. I'm talking about strictly environmental. I just think the dust suppression system, right now, it just goes. We could ask for a better system. Not just the old school DOB way. This is 16 years. We'll try to do something better. Why can't we do the pilot program in this? They are taking public housing. Right, so we could force some things on them, I think.
Well, you know, the discussion of renovation and demolition isn't over. That's not what this discussion is.
Oh, I know.
This discussion is about demolition. And what do we want to be sure we get if there's demolition? And I wrote down with you the few things that you said. If you have other bullets, if other people have.
Yeah, I've got other bullets, when they get down to the foundation and all that, what's the impact? Is it better for us to let them go later to get that short in the time frame? You know, so there's a lot of noise. So when you're digging down the building for the foundation and all that kind of stuff, sometimes it's better to rip off the Band-Aid and say, go to 7, let's look at the schedule, because if I can maybe take the noise for 6 months, then sit around and take the same noise for 18 months, right? It's about hours, it's about manpower and time. Are we looking at construction schedules to help mitigate the environmental impact? I mean, I think we should state that, I don't know, that's something that we've done in the past as well. Let schools off in the summer, right? Those 3 months, we should give them the hours they need, so there's a less impact on the schools, you know what I mean, Mike? Something like that.
We've done a lot in the past, I have to say, and we've written letters. I was, with Leslie's help, I was looking at the Port Authority letter, and there's all sorts of good stuff in it. Low carbon negative building materials, well, that's hidden in this document, but I don't know whether it's the best low carbon, permanent, permeable pavement and bioswales, it's hidden in this document.
I know, Marty.
Under
The
construction.
point is, if you're, Marty, it's a political game, they put it in there, unless we mandate it and it's in the drawings, it's not happening.
Right, so what you're saying and what we should be bringing to Chelsea Land Use includes the bullets that I have in this list that we should just type it out and say, here is a list of things that we're concerned about. Stormwater management, robust tree canopy, somebody texted me that they want a tree canopy, and you're right. And the trouble is that stuff is already in the EIS, and you're right. Whether it's in the EIS or not doesn't matter, we should be saying it anyway.
So it needs to be
Your
construction documents that are gonna be approved, not just this is a wish list, that might happen, might not happen. Cause that's all they're doing, they're trying to, their environment impact is written by them. And they're trying to say less impact, just like in this presentation we saw before, they determined that there wasn't, these two changes didn't impact anything. They're bored. It wasn't, you know, when they said it was not determined, it was determined it wouldn't affect the changes. It's the same thing they're doing.
Well, I mean, this document is so huge that.
Right, it's written that way. I think we should have a public dashboard, I wrote it down, for noise levels, air quality, construction projects.
What do you mean by dashboard?
Literally, a very simple thing where instead of calling 311, they go directly to their community liaison and it shows noise levels, people can track it. You know, like on their phone. It's a 16-year project. So it's basically like an app. Because it's so big and it's so across so many blocks. I can guarantee you, the first community liaison the developer has will be gone after 3 years.
Brad, with regards to that point, I actually don't trust related to keep proper numbers. They're not able to be trusted to take a proper number on a vote. 301 is important. There's amendments that can be made by a city council member on changes to 301 that would filter over to this construction site. I just don't trust related to keep real numbers that would keep them accountable to any EIS request that we have. That being said, if we're going to be tracking 301 complaints related to the lived experience, you know, sound, air, water, things of that nature, there needs to be real penalties tied to the volume of accumulated 301 complaints and violations that are observed by neighbors.
I mean, if your concern is that related is not going to honestly account for, in particular, noise and air quality complaints, those are entirely monitorable by like the third-party devices that in theory do not lie. They can malfunction, but they're generally objective.
Exactly.
So if you like that, you could utilize
Roberta, I think the biggest concentration is do we want to ask for a third-party environmental observation team, or are we going to rely on 311 to report the proper numbers over to the district manager, which they do frequently, and we have a great district manager that keeps track of that and reports back, you know, with regards to those kind of 311 complaints. I don't trust related, period, to do anything that's transparent with regards to numbers. They couldn't keep a proper vote number. They're not going to keep a proper number with regards to complaints.
So when Brad talked about a public dashboard, I thought pretty much of what you're saying, Chris, who's going to monitor it? And you said that a third-party environmental.
Marty, they have to, per DOB, hire a third-party environmental specialist to monitor. Independent. Yeah, they already have to do that. All I'm saying is that third party, we would love to have that publicly made and distributed in a dashboard form. Maybe.
That's putting together the couple of comments that have been made.
Yeah, so
it fits with what Chris is saying.
Yeah, I agree with Chris.
Look, I don't trust an environmental liaison that is paid for by related either. And so a public, like, that's their liaison to this government body. And the only numbers that I trust are numbers that are reported to this government body from the government. I do not trust a third party hired by related to work on behalf of the people of Chelsea or Community Board 4.
I don't mind your saying that. I'm prone to agree with you, but I want to be able to say that Chelsea Land Use that our brainstorming has arrived at a third-party public dashboard independently hired by somebody other than related or agreed upon in a conversation between related and some other party. I don't know the mechanism. What's the mechanism?
The party would have to be the Community Board 4.
What's the mechanism of selecting somebody that will perform the kind of work that we need to have performed in order to be assured that the environmental regulations are being maintained.
That's a special envoy from DEP and DOB. That's not something that I think this board
trust
should be
them,
talking
yes.
about in terms of going into mediation with Related to find a third party. And that's what it is. It's a legal mediation to find a susceptible.
Christopher, I think what I'm trying to say about a dashboard is this. This document, you see this document? This is not made for the mom on the block or the
You're
dad or
absolutely right.
even me. What I'm getting at is, I want something more of a public dashboard, taking in the data that's in an equal form. Here's like a circle, you know what I mean? And it's taking, because the city mandates that they do all these things. We're just trying to take it to another level. That's all I'm getting at. I don't.
So there is a
To Marty's point.
there's a good
I was
government
trying
group
to
called Open
simplify.
Data. There's a good government group called Open Data that uses all the data that's provided by New York City to build modules like that.
I think that if we don't necessarily have to be very prescriptive as to what that like this ultimately entails, except to say this needs to have like objective monitoring. We want it to be publicly accessible, the data. And there is a level of distrust between the community and Related in providing accurate data. And we would like to see a accountable, independent third party from Related. It could be DEP or DOB, but doesn't have to be. We would like to see them performing that monitoring work and reporting it publicly.
That summarizes
The
what
numbers better go off to the government. Once again, Roberta, we cannot trust anything that Related does with regards to their
I
mandated
don't
third
think
party
anyone's
monitor.
suggesting that we trust them. I'm simply saying that I don't know what, like, either NYCHA or DEP or DOB or a third party that might be legally mandated by the city to be retained in this project. Like, I do not know who would be the best party to ultimately perform this work, and I am open to a non-related, like, related companies entity, an entity not accountable to Related companies performing that monitoring work, and but I don't know who it should
what
be.
we're asking for.
We could write get grant money to bring on a grad student to monitor that, but it'd be cycling through the same way that a liaison from Related would be cycling through. The numbers, it has to go through 311. That's it just has to.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump in here. I think we're getting hooked on this one thing here. It's a huge DEIS. We can definitely find language that would support a request for a public dashboard, which I think is important, or publicly accessible data. And we can request third-party environmental oversight, whatever, or mutually agreed upon. We can find that, we can submit that to CLUE. And that's one of the requests. We don't have to be extremely prescriptive right now or detailed on who that's going to be or what that's going to be, or, I think we can definitely ask for it. I also want
to independently, with independently verified data.
Sure. I mean, we can definitely work on the language. Absolutely. Absolutely. But I understand the spirit of the request, I think, is valid. And should be in our notes. I do want to say to the committee, I kind of went through, for better or worse, we've had a lot of DEISs lately on very big projects, which is helpful because we already have a blueprint of kind of what we ask for when it comes to big projects, as far as A, environmental requests, and B, open space requests, which is our piece of the pie. So we already have that foundation of asks that we can obviously incorporate and forward to CLUE in this case as well. I understand that the NYCHA project is a different monster, and there are definitely specifics that are not specific to, say, Port Authority, right? Or anything else. But we did write a letter, or excuse me, we did write notes a while back for the NYCHA draft scope of work, environmental and open space elements, which is not exactly the same as the DEIS, but at least we can use some of those suggestions, materials, comments for this as well. That was a 4-page, I think, letter or notes to land use. But if there's anything else specific to the NYCHA project, we can definitely include it. And like I said, like Marty said, it's not a letter, so we can, send them notes tomorrow, the next day. If anyone thinks of anything, put it in an email. We'll write a nice big juicy letter to Clue.
We have till the beginning of next week.
Well,
Go ahead, you haven't spoken.
so, yeah, I mean, I think you're looking at it from the right perspective, but we still don't know whether it's gonna be demolition or reconstruction, and depending on what that is, it's gonna be different levels of impact. But I think with Brad had mentioned it, but if we're looking at something as long-term as the 16 years, we have no experience with that. I mean, I don't even know the level of what we need to ask for.
We have 2 16-year projects,
Yeah, I mean, this
right? in a row.
16-year project, I assume that 16 years was the
My
demolition.
point was, they
Yeah.
state that the construction timeline is 16 years,
Yeah.
but this environmental impact does not
it's
take any account of the stress of 16 years.
I know, that's what
It's
I'm
just a
saying.
statement.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I don't even know how to address that, because I don't know if there is something that's in the last few decades that's comparable to this. Especially if it becomes a demolition project. I mean, it's huge. And the impact is just gonna go on and on.
I mean, I have a lot of ideas on what we could say to help lower people's stress. They sponsor fairs, they give money to the parks. They pay for the kids, kids camps. Like, there's a lot that I can come up with. But to Christopher's point earlier, I just wanted to say, Marty, a CBA, what's the word? A community benefits agreement, which would take into account what we're talking about. Have them sign something that we as a community put together with the electives that will hold them accountable, an actual real agreement. Something like that, the community benefits agreement,
Yeah, I mean, something has to.
which
address
a
the-
lot of these things can be added to.
Yeah.
You sponsor that, you're taking the kids during the worst demolition period, that can go away to summer camp, you're sponsoring things. There's a lot of community benefits agreement that we can put out there. There's a lot of ideas to it.
I'm just gonna react to what you're saying. It's a good idea, and what I'm gonna react to is that we had a memorandum of understanding in 2009 on this project, and you know what good that did.
Marty, all we can do is try.
So they're really not legally enforceable, but we as a community are pretty good at pushing to enforce these.
We have human lessons.
I'm 100% in agreement with Brad. I am a huge fan of CBAs, huge fan. In fact, we just learned Gateway said, too bad we didn't have it in ours, because now we're kind of scrambling on the back end of getting some sort of community benefit. So it doesn't hurt to ask or push.
I think that was dead COVID time, remember Leslie, when this is kind of going on, I think, wasn't it?
The Gateway?
No, we were kind of dealing with the nitty gritty, it was literally during COVID, I think.
Was it?
On what,
The preliminary, no,
yeah. Yeah, that's been going, the planning has been going for a long time.
Yeah.
In this piece.
Yes, I have a question, Leslie. You were saying you were reading the open spaces. I've reading that one as well. The accessory open spaces, have they really gone into what it is and what is it gonna be, community accessibility? Because I just didn't, I'm reading construction as well and like trying to put everything into a plan, into a focus, and just not reading anything of what that would be.
Not here.
To be honest with you, I don't want to give a false impression. I have not read a lot of the DEIS yet. I will before but I have not.
Okay, so if that was one of my
We
questions.
can, you know what, Candace, you and I can talk this weekend offline and
Okay.
and
The
whatever
thing
like,
is that the
specifics you want.
The EIS doesn't talk about construction schedules, it isn't, a whole lot it doesn't talk about.
Yeah, it does, like, there was like, the rat mitigation, like, if you go around in that area, you can already see the rats are tunneling under the trees and stuff, like, what's gonna happen with that, the whole, once they start demoing, if, you know, if they demo infill or not, or whatever they may do, that whole rat situation's going to fence out everywhere, you know, it's gonna be, they have a huge, and there was something in there that they had, you know, that was one of their things that they were cleaning up, what are we gonna do once that happens?
Well, that's
You know,
something that they should be
I know.
responsible for right now. And you're bringing up like something that's falling through the loops. They're managing these properties already, right? So like they should be mitigating for rats in those trees. They should be going about and creating a program to decrease the rat population in the areas that they're managing. And if they're not, they should be doing it. And they should be doing it over the entire span of whatever project that it is. So we should be calling that out. That's definitely a priority. The other thing is we're talking about EIS and environmental impacts. We have the Chelsea Health Center right in that area. You know, as a CBA, if you know, this is probably HHS that would deal with it, but whatever environmental impacts residents are experiencing, they will experience health impacts because of it. And I'd like to see health programs go into effect, paid for by them, dollar for cost for residents at an area, covered, whether it's mental health, whether it's respiratory health. It doesn't matter. I want that covered, and they should be using that health center there.
That's why I think the agreement would be good, Christopher. I think we're all in agreement. There's a lot of things that could be added to that and negotiated.
A community benefits agreement or any document like this will take considerable effort to confront. Yeah. And it will, you know, somebody smarter than me is gonna.
I think, you know, what I would always, you know, aim small, miss small, if it's, keep it very, you know, not 50 things, but these are the three main ones. Health, you know, or, you know, whatever we come up with, but my point is, and also then we can hold them to those three things, even as administrations change, council members change, that we have, it's very clear. Because we're late, you know, they're not going anywhere. So they definitely want, I would think, wildlife.
I was talking to a contractor about related fairly recently. He said, you know, there are two of them. Which one are you talking about? I didn't know there were two of them. They said one does commercial and one does residential or something like that. So we need to find out the right one, I guess is what I'm saying here.
So we have for Clue, a community benefits agreement, a number of comments about noise and dust suppression and communication about problems of dashboard.
Diesel change. I think that's important. There's a lot of fuel going to be used.
In the construction process.
That is in there. There's also,
Diesel change to what, from 4 to what? Or it should be.
No, it's 3 to 4.
Brad mentioned something, the noise of acoustical boxes.
Yeah, acoustic, you know, I would say upgraded noise mitigation. I think that's right, what we're trying to get at, like upgraded.
Yes, yeah.
Not just the standard, because this is 16 years. And you can reference the project that they did in Hudson Yards, where they built big acoustical panels and they worked inside of them, and it worked. Because their community liaison was very good. He would come here all the time, and we were like the neighbors, everyone was going nuts. They even paid, they don't like to say publicly, they didn't really want to, for new windows to be put in that had extra insulation and noise off of it, yeah. So some developers do the right thing. They paid for the whole wall of that building. Remember all those apartments, but all the windows.
Sure.
And there are going to be people living adjacent to this construction, primarily NYCHA tenants, not just people who are a couple dozen more yards away.
Non-NYCHA
Yes.
neighbors.
Yeah, so
And that's-
it will be incredibly
That's
important to
consistent.
mitigate noise in
Huh?
that context.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in their thing, everybody's half mile, so if you're in a half mile radius, you're affected, or a mile and a half for quality justice or something.
And guys, I have a general list too, of like sustainable materials and resources, local sourcing, sustainable management, reduce and reuse, the waste reduction and management in the construction, proper waste disposal, water conservation, all this stuff I have listed, that I can just, you could just get in just when you just regular any project that you are looking for an environmental, advanced request for new construction. But if anyone has anything more, because I've been keeping notes also, I know you have too, Marty, when everyone's been talking, I've been also writing them down.
Go ahead.
Just want to say, we want to say that we want to see it in the construction documents. Not that they're gonna say, we'll explore it, right? See, that's the difference.
That's the thing I read.
That's exactly, they're just, maybe we won't, maybe we won't. And guess what? Cost money. So the answer is, we won't. So unless we say we'd like to actually see these things in the documents that's actually being built, that should be our request. Everything Leslie said, that I just, we need to take it to another step. In my opinion.
David has a question.
Go ahead, David. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. I hope I'm maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but I was under the right now. It appears that demolition hasn't been approved, and people. There's a lot of people in the community that want to have it refurbished rather than demolition. It seems like you're jumping ahead, or you're just being preparatory about demolition because. A lot of people in the community really don't want that. There's a significant portion that don't
we're
want
just responding to what we have in front of us.
That's absolutely correct, David. What we're doing is responding to the EIS that assumes demolition. But that doesn't mean that we're saying it's going to be demolished. This is just, it's responding to a document that's in front of us. Are you going to add something?
But the EIS studies the non-demolition work, and we indicated there would likely be construction work and noise impacts in a non-demolition scenario. And so it's studied there are adverse impacts to a either demolition or a rehab scenario, and we want to capture both of those in these comments.
That's kind of what I'm saying. If you could,
in the EIS,
that's kind of my question is that
renovation.
But it's studied in there.
if we can include renovation
It's what they're
in that,
legally required to do.
if we can include that in renovation, because I don't, it's a slippery slope. I understand what you're doing, but it's confusing for people. Because they'll say, okay, it's almost a fait accompli that they're going to do the demolition. I think we should emphasize that this is just a draft speculative, and also maybe add some things about renovation in it to say that I don't know if how the committee feels about renovation or not, but to say renovation is an option, and for renovation, we want this also.
I mean, there are environmental benefits to renovation and rehab over demolition, and it's noted across the board. We've dealt with that before, David. So we can probably, if the co-chairs would include it in a preface that, we can call out that as an environmental thing that we are considering.
Yeah, that would be great. So I'm late in this process, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Because
David, I'm sorry, David, just to answer your question also, or maybe help. I think what you're talking about would be more a question for Clue. When it comes to what they're going to do or how they're going to handle that with the language of demolition versus construction. I'm sure they'll word the letter very, fancily, and it'll be well written to kind of walk that line. The second thing, what Christopher said is right, that and I think he brings up a good point, and maybe we can gently address that. I don't know if the committee's for this, and I'm not saying I am, but that non-demolition, just by definition, renovation is much better for environment. But I don't know if we want to do that. That's what some studies say, some others say, I don't know if we want to wade into that pool. I think maybe we should just address what is in front of us and the environmental impact statement.
Go ahead.
I would appreciate, like, I think that we can talk, for example, about something like embodied carbon or the more limited potential air quality impacts associated with renovation. But you could also look at the improved building systems and the all electric requirements over the life cycle of these buildings that would come with a new construction. I think that there are some pros and some cons, but they exist on different dimensions and in different regards. And so I think like it would be, speaking with very broad brush, to be like, this is significantly better for the environment because there are so many dimensions upon which we ultimately assess the impact of environmental changes.
To really truncate what you just said, we have no idea which way the mass balance is gonna go. Whether renovation is more environmentally friendly, or if in the end, over a long period of time, new buildings are more environmentally friendly.
And we could say that, but I don't think we have like the objective information that indicates that one of these is significantly better. We can talk about the things that make it better, make renovation better, that do make new construction lower carbon. You can entail all of those things, but I don't think we can definitively say this is going to be better on every different dimension. There are a couple of different dimensions on which you would ultimately assess this and time horizons, and you would have to figure that out. And I don't know the answer there.
But in either case, we're gonna want a community benefits agreement, we're gonna want noise abatement, et cetera. The Leslie's list, let's call it that, because she's got a good list. So, I mean, this is part of the list. We all have a list.
Yeah, but I also think we have to emphasize, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think we have to emphasize the enormity of the
16 years.
community. I mean, this is not just about that little NYCHA, the campuses. This extends so far into the community with even just the traffic that's gonna be diverted and the pedestrian traffic. There's so much, there's such an enormity that it affects, everyone's gonna be affected. Anybody from, the 200-300 blocks and west, by all of these things, by the dust. And this is a terrible example. I don't mean to make it like this, but just think 9/11. With all that dust flying around and everything that came from there. How many years did it take to remove, the debris from there? I don't know. It was concentrated, it was a different kind of thing. But when we think about everything that flew around, and they say there's no asbestos there, for example, I don't know. They claim there isn't.
In the NYCHA building?
In the NYCHA building. I saw somewhere in that report, they mentioned that there wasn't, but there will be stuff floating in the air. I had stuff in mine, not just the Main Street.
Show me when you can where it says that there's no asbestos.
Oh, I have to, yeah.
I don't believe it.
I think I saw it somewhere.
It was in the executive summary, it's one of those, it was one of those parts, but the executive summary, it said something about it.
These buildings were built in a.
It said that there wasn't, sorry, it wasn't executive, it was, you had to go through, but it was one of the people. It was one of those pages, when I find it, but the guy that did it, he said that there was no test in it or something, because he had to for them to put this out, they had somebody have to go and test everything. And he tested things, and that's what in his things was.
But even without these.
I'll look, when I find it, I'm not getting the best Wi-Fi here right now,
Quantity of stuff that's gonna be flying through the air, it's not gonna be limited to a half a mile. It's gonna be all over the community.
Unfortunately, it's not gonna be like 9/11.
No, it's not going to be, but still, again, this one passed in 16 years. And
Yes.
the remediation that has to be considered and addressed is huge.
Well,
So, I'm a little confused about this thing of demolition or renovation. I was under the impression that as of right, once the DIS comes out, the project can proceed as of right. And that includes demolition.
I think
Is that,
Basically, they do
Correct.
still need, I think
Not
they don't
entirely.
have the section 18 yet, which is, they have the local land use thing, which if that's right, we do not need. Then section 18, they do still require some sort of federal process. I do not believe that has been completed.
but once they complete that,
And
then
then
they
that's,
can
we
move
don't have a
forward.
role, a discretionary role.
Right, that, once that's completed, they can move with demolition.
partially. There are a couple of buildings that they say they can demolish as of right. I don't think it goes for all of the buildings. It's I think it's on the Chelsea Elliot campus somewhere that applies to it. They're looking to demolish those first as of right, with the exception that they need some federal approval for, no matter what, they need some federal approval to go forward.
But not for demolition, it's a federal approval for
Yes.
something else.
No, the
Yes,
federal
for
approval
anything.
is for the demolition, is my understanding, and the section 18 process does need to occur, but it's not a thing where we have a formal role.
How many of you saw Jessica Chate's presentation? It's a good deck. She did a, I'm talking to you, Rob, she did it, I think, a fabulous job in putting together 4 years of back and forth in the deck. It's available. It's definitely, I think it's probably a little bit more than an hour, 5 to 10 minutes more than an hour. It's worth hearing her presentation. It'll answer some good questions. So do we have enough, Leslie?
Sure. I mean, like I said, it's open to email also, if anyone thinks of anything.
And that email deadline is next Wednesday. I mean, if you don't get us to it next Wednesday, I just made that up, but I was told sometime next week it has to be. I personally would appreciate any comments that you want to memorialize. Go ahead.
You guys, if you can give a bit of direction around like what specific areas you want covered, like where you want an extra set of eyes, because in Janine's email, it was not clear from direction from you which sections and as a first timer, I wasn't even know what I was reading for, to be completely honest, so like.
I'll speak to that. I did that on purpose because what I knew I was being vague. I wanted you to look at this table of contents that is in the EIS. The link to this is in the email that you got.
Yeah, I saw it, and it's just, there was so much, but I think that if you want like all eyes on everything, then you should assign like.
I do not want all eyes on everything. I want your eyes on something that interests you.
Okay.
And I don't know whether it's hazardous materials or because there's so much shit here that I'm not supposed to say that online, am I? Steve Colbert does.
It's perfect, like, fine.
There's so much stuff here that, and I read all of the environmental stuff this week. It spoiled my week and my wife hates me. Choose a section. What would it be?
I ended up reading about schools, with the environment stuff, but.
No, environment, not schools. This is the.
Playgrounds, the Aggie section, yeah, there was some stuff around kids, with like the displacement of the pre-K, K, and stuff like centers and stuff. But.
Well, what we're responsible for to Clue is to give them the environmental stuff, but I would carry my own thought further. If what you just articulated is what you'll read thoroughly enough to make comments on it, and even if it's not our committee, who the hell cares? Do it and make comments. Because this is drudgery reading this stuff. And so choose a section that concerns you and make comments on it. Yes, Leslie and I need the environmental comments, but I would say go for it. Does that make sense, Leslie?
No, I agree. I agree. And I really think actually, I mean, no, none of these documents are fun to read. I find this particularly like ridiculously, I mean, hard to read. I think they do it on purpose, but this is one that I feel like
You
it's
don't
not.
think they do it on purpose, you know they do it on purpose.
Of course.
There is like
I mean, I've actually had other ones that are not as bad. This one just seems like it's, yeah.
This goes by NYCHA.
This is
Probably related there from that trade. NYCHA's concerned. Right.
Yeah, that's it. That's gotta be.
It's statutory.
Old business, new business.
I did, go on the, what was it, it was with Tom Fox, the.
Connectivity charrette.
Activity. So it was a little, like a.
Give me some background, I
some-
don't understand what you're talking about.
So it was students, architect students, they were brought together to look at the area right on, what pier was it on, sorry, let me. Or what pier, it's on the west side, one of our piers, connectivity over, especially near the area of the Western Rail Yards, that whole section, and Leslie, I kind of gave him the gateway project that we did, the West Side project a couple years back, that whole, gave him that whole spill of like what was in that area, what we found difficult, the pedestrians crossing over to the West Side Highway. And in our last meeting, we had spoken about the platform kind of going over one of the playgrounds onto the West Side Highway, that platform that Leslie had shown us. I showed it to them and the students were like, wow, this is great. And they were actually like, oh, you know, thinking about like, you know, from Broadway, the walk over and the transportation of like people coming over and like they actually thinking of like how to get more people to the west side. And they originally were there to present as like a group that they were looking at like taking waste and like dumping it into our area and kind of building off of that and those piers. And then they were like, this isn't what we're here for. Like, well, let's talk about like, let's get people here. Like it was they were just brand new students. They're reading Robert Moses, just trying to understand what's going on. And, you know, it was all about connectivity and how to get people there. They came up with some really great ones. Like I said, like 29th Street actually closing that off and making that a walkway, 30th Street, making that a closed off street. Because if it was already gonna be done on 33rd, 34th, you know, connecting the Javits Center a little bit more, instead of having to cross the West Side Highway. So, they were supposed to get back to us about, just like their, a summary of all the documents that we went through, the overlaps and stuff. They still haven't, emailed us back about it, you know, what they were coming up with, but it was just more of a learning exercise for them and just, you know, giving them, you know, talking about the west side and about the flood and, you know, where they could think about like actual, you know, getting people over and, you know, the uses. I brought up the drones of what, you know, we would like to see on the west side, the blue highways, things like that. So just other uses to get people to the west side was what they were wanting to look at. So that was it. It was a fun project. I was glad I was able to step in. It was nice just to hear them and like, you know, listen to them and they're thinking. And like I said, the Broadway coming across, and they were like, how else are we supposed to get there? They had no idea. Like some of them went there and they were like, it's really far away. Like that was their thing. It was like, it was really far. Like even if you went from one end, they were just, how do we make it easier? So.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for going. I know Candace volunteered at our last WPE meeting to do that, and there aren't, a lot of ways from that area to connect to Hudson River Park. And I think they were trying to find ways to do that. So just to follow up, I did ask the group if they would present their findings to us when they had them. And then we can work from there. So we're just waiting on the students and and their final report to see what they can come up with.
It was two, and was it NYU and what was the other?
I think it was Syracuse and Columbia, but
Oh, there, not NYU.
I think.
And when do you think you're gonna get feedback?
Well, they just emailed me, I think yesterday, that they are hopefully gonna come to us, probably not next month, because I think we're gonna have a busy agenda, but maybe the month after. I don't know. We gotta figure out with the professors. They're compiling the results now.
Which department are they from?
Architecture.
Architecture was the answer.
They had a plan a few years ago where they suggested filling in this waterway between Governor's Island and the bottom of Manhattan. That was the way to solve the problem of getting to Staten Island. I couldn't believe it.
I don't think so.
No. It's the dumbest thing I ever heard.
I just have two things. Leslie, it'd be good to say that, hey, we'd love to see a rendering of 29th being a park. Talking to the tunnel people. I just let you know, I'm on the meatpacking public member district board. Obviously Jeffrey is the president.
He's a meatpacker.
He is. 14th Street is gonna be made into a public plaza. They're taking the 4 lanes, they're taking 2, and they're putting a bus lane all the way to the west side. And I like to put, this is Jeffrey's term, it's the back porch to the water of our district, which I thought was a great term to look at it. So they're gonna be doing a hardscape first, kind of like how they did the first plaza by the Apple store there. A hardscape version, and then I think a year later, do the ones with the trees and make it more permanent. And cause all those stores die over there as well, because it's just so big and doesn't work. And then in those plaza areas it has, so that's happening, just.
So 14th Street is gonna be closed.
Basically, no.
Between 9th and 10th.
Between 9th and 10th, that big, it's 4 lanes with the cobblestones, they're gonna take half of it and make it a public plaza.
Oh, neat.
And then eventually make it more permanent. So it's the DOT hardscape first, with the lines.
Are they keeping the cobblestones?
It's coming up, I wanna say. I gotta get the exact date, but it's coming up, I think, soon.
Are they keeping the cobblestones?
I believe so. The first one's a hardscape. The second version will be, and they have renderings, Jeffrey has renderings and everything. They're all asking when they present. It's kind of public space, not really park, it's more transportation.
Push not like we did the bus, when you push out onto the streets, that's what we were talking about in transportation.
Yeah, well, there's gonna be a bus lane, so, it's just,
Extension.
right, and then, so you're taking the 2 other lanes, so instead of that big vast area of real estate not being used except for cars and buses, now half of it's gonna be used for public.
Yeah, but bus lane stays.
Oh, yeah, bus lane stays, yes, absolutely.
So is it like in the middle of the street, just plaza?
Yeah, it's kind of on one side, so they make 2 lanes kind of towards the Apple store, then the other 2 lanes are gonna be public space, which is it's almost like 29th, right? It's a long block, all the way. Nice.
At 29th Street abuts some open lots. One side of 29th Street is Con Ed, I think, the south side, but the north side is I don't know who owns it, but
And then we gotta remember, if they do get the casino, that double building, that's a whole lot, they wanted to basically take 30th
We're not getting.
and then takes the,
They're gonna knock off a lot of streets in our neighborhood.
I'm just bringing it up, right? And we said to
What do I
them,
do with my car?
we said we wanted the 30, if you're taking it, then we want it to be a full park, or move forward. So we have 2 blocks.
Anything else, new business, old business, anything at all?
Just that they legalized drones, they're flying all over the world, they're transporting people. I wanted towards the water, but I believe.
Here, we mentioned, with the piers, we do want the drone transportation.
Well, we have to do something, we are missing out, it's,
Okay, but that's a good spot for it.
it's green energy. Cuts down on all our emissions, the trucks, and it's the future. We're literally designing. You know,
I was really.
this tunnel is designed, it's shocking, Marty, I knew the answer, I just wanted her to say it.
Okay, so you're talking
I
about
was-
drones, but what about just having high-speed trains and being able?
Oh, no, I just talking about 2 things, the way I look at it, it's a transportation project, and they didn't think about what's above the tunnels, which we could have used. Whether there's piers.
I was floored when I pressed them at an at another meeting on why they're not doing barges, and they give me all this stuff about the silt that's there, that they can't get the barges over, they can't get the barge close.
They're dredging, Mark. It's a joke.
I'm with you.
I know you were, sorry.
Even if I knocked you off your bike the other day, almost. Anything else,
Chris
friends?
has.
Huh? Oh, go,
Just-
Chris.
Just a new business question. I saw the helicopter crash. We all know about the helicopter crash in the Hudson. What's going on with Hudson River Park Trust? What's the general emergency response there?
Yeah.
What's the question? The helicopter crash was on the other side of the river. I think.
It was on the Jersey side or the city side?
Yeah.
I'm not hearing it, Chris.
Okay, well, was the helicopter crash on the Jersey side of the river or the Manhattan side of the river?
Jersey.
Thank you. Okay, I was wondering why it wasn't spoken about. I appreciate it very much. That's all. Thank you.
I'm not sure it was. That's what they first said, but then they were saying that the response team, there was one response team that came from Jersey and they had a long way to go, they said, because they had to go around the tip of the island and get on that other side.
FDNY responded. I saw the commissioner and the 343 boat. There was definitely FDNY boats in there. I saw that.
Yeah, there were, and also the ferry, the New York, well, what was New York Waterfront? It's now New York's, I guess.
In terms of ending this meeting and going home, I wonder if you want to make any comments at all about the overall meeting, anything else you want to say? Any suggestion to the chair?
I mean.
Motion to adjourn.
Marty.
A motion to adjourn.
Down the meeting.
I'm not fishing for praise.
Yeah, I would motion to adjourn, or second.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We have one letter coming out of this meeting, a gateway letter that asks for community benefit.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Good night.
Leslie, for all that research you did. Thank you.
Good
Bye,
night.
guys.
Thank you all.
Great motion.
Good night, everyone.